Chapter 120. On TV or in movies, almost everyone has seen the spectacular scene of someone randomly picking up a wine bottle and smashing it on someone's head. Then, with a bang sound, the glass and wine spilled all over the floor. However, in reality, the wine bottles used in movies were basically made of syrup, so the texture was very light and brittle, and would break at the slightest touch. A real wine bottle, especially a decent one, wouldn't shatter so easily when smashed on the head. Bang! Therefore, when Colored Glaze picked up the wine bottle and smashed it on Filial Piety's head, the latter fell to the ground, seeing stars. However, the wine bottle in Colored Glaze's hand was completely fine. Suddenly, Colored Glaze looked at the wine bottle in her hand in confusion, as if wondering why this thing did not break. It should be because I smashed it at the wrong angle. Will it break like this? Bang! Before he finished speaking, Colored Glaze grabbed the mouth of the bottle with both hands and smashed it on Filial Piety's knee. Ah! My knee! It didn't break, I don't believe it. How can the quality of this wine bottle be so good? Bang! 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 Under Ryuto's helpless gaze, Colored Glaze picked up the bottle and smashed it in a series of random smashes. Her actions made people think that she was playing a drum set. When Filial Piety was smashed to the ground and rolled, Ryuto finally could not stand it anymore. He quickly shouted, "Cut! No, you can't do it like this, you're not professional enough." Then, he came to Colored Glaze and reached out to hold her jade-like hand. He said seriously, "There's something wrong with the way you're smashing. First, relax your wrist and hold it gently. Like this? That's right, leave a little space between your palm and the bottle. When you raise one hand, raise it above your head. When you swing it down, use force from your shoulder. Imagine that your arm is a whip and it feels like you're whipping the bottle." As Ryuto spoke, he reached out from behind to help Colored Glaze adjust the posture of her arm and elbow. However, at this time, the two's bodies were almost pressed together, and this posture, with one in front and one behind, was quite similar to when the Titan and Nick stood at the bow of the Jack Ruth. Of course, compared to this romantic scene, what they were about to do next was not so romantic. After Colored Glaze got into the correct posture of smashing someone with a bottle, Ryuto went over to help Filial Piety on the ground and pulled him in front of Colored Glaze. "Stand properly, bend your back, and lower your head slightly." "Ah! What are you yelling for? Hurry up and stand still. Don't move when the bottle comes crashing down." Like this? That's right. If you move, I'll break all 5 of your fingers, starting from the joints. I guarantee that you'll feel so much pain that you'll want to commit suicide on the spot." Yes. With Ryuto's kind help, Filial Piety finally stood in front of Colored Glaze, trembling as he waited for the bottle to hit him. Why? Do I have to stand there obediently and let someone hit my head with a bottle? In an instant, Filial Piety had a huge doubt in his heart. But after all, the situation was stronger than the person. Filial Piety did not have any room to resist and could only silently wait for reinforcements to arrive. Looking at his frightened appearance, he was like an extra who had just entered the set and was asked by the director to act as a Suicide Squad extra. The most disturbing thing was that the person who was acting with him was not using a prop bottle, but a real one. When the two were ready, Ryuto picked up a roll of newspaper from the side and raised it to his mouth. After coughing, he shouted to Colored Glaze, "Cough, cough, the world is ready, countdown, 3, 2, 1. Smash! Bang!" As Colored Glaze followed the instructions and smashed the bottle on Filial Piety's head, the crisp sound of a congratulatory gift finally rang out. When Filial Piety fell to the ground holding his head, Ryuto could not help but give a thumbs up to Colored Glaze and laughed. "Not bad, you have a talent for learning how to smash a head with a bottle. Have you considered becoming an extreme in the future?" "No way, humph." After successfully achieving a breakthrough in acting, Colored Glaze's face revealed a trace of joy, but she still proudly turned her head away. However, after the series of farce just now, Dancing Costume, who was watching all of this from the back, was completely dumbfounded. So it was possible to bully someone to this extent? Was it okay to use someone as a practice tool to smash a head with a bottle? Although Ryuto and Colored Glaze were having a lot of fun, to filial piety, who was being treated like a toy, those few minutes just now were the ultimate torture. It had to be said that Ryuto was quite talented at torturing people, and of course, Colored Glaze was the same. Even now, Ryuto could still remember the scene where she took a taser and madly pressed it on Yamamoto's body, electrocuting him to the point that he emitted a burnt smell. At this time, Colored Glaze, who had calmed down, said to Dancing Costume, "Very good, I've had enough fun. Carry that guy over." Torturing the little bastard filial piety Kanzaki was indeed quite relaxing, but if they didn't finish things quickly, that old bastard Komashiro Yoshiyuki would be rushing over in a fit of anger. Although Colored Glaze could suppress her cousin filial piety, who was of the same generation, she couldn't suppress her uncle Yoshiyuki, who was twice as powerful. Thus, if they wanted to completely deal with that bastard father and son, it wouldn't be enough to just rely on their fists and reason. They had to use some special methods. Thump. Dancing Costume tossed the large body bag that she had carried in earlier to filial piety's side. What is this? Because of the performance of smashing a head with a bottle, filial piety's head was still a little dizzy. But before he could finish wondering, Ryuto pulled out a shiny knife out of nowhere and stuffed it into filial piety's hand. Come, listen to me. Now, hold this knife tightly. After hearing Ryuto's gentle persuasion, filial piety couldn't help but tighten his grip on the knife and instinctively asked, Then what? After the lesson of smashing a head, filial piety was almost scared out of his wits. He no longer dared to resist Ryuto and Colored Glaze's orders. He was like a dog that had been quickly trained. Then, I'll count to 3, 2, 1, and you'll stab the thing in your hand into this bag. Are you okay? Ryuto pointed at the large bag that had just been tossed to the side. He took out his cell phone and pointed it at filial piety as he slowly backed away, acting like a great director. I'm 3, 2, 1. Do it. If filial piety thought about it carefully, he would feel that this kind of thing should not be done recklessly. But after being yelled at by Ryuto, his body instinctively trembled, as if he remembered the fear of being smashed in the head by a beer bottle. Under the influence of fear, filial piety frantically took the thing in his hand and stabbed it into the bag. The moment he stabbed it, the thing in the bag seemed to struggle slightly, but it immediately stopped moving. What did I do? While filial piety was trembling from what he had just done, Ryuto walked over and opened the zipper of the bag. The zipper was unzipped, and a handsome face that should have been quite handsome but was now suffused with a dark aura was revealed. The moment he saw this face, filial piety was dumbfounded. Isn't this the assassin that he met with his father yesterday? The Executor Kaiser. Chapter 121. Although the Kaiser he saw yesterday was in disguise, filial piety could probably recognize him from his dazzling blonde hair and facial features. Of course, it wasn't a big deal that an assassin fell out of the bag. The real problem was that the assassin seemed to be dead, and was killed by filial piety himself. At this moment, the knife that filial piety just stabbed was still in front of Kaiser's chest. Although it didn't stab into the heart, this stab was enough to kill the already weakened assassin on the spot. Deng 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 deng, congratulations. Congratulations to young Master Filial Piety for completing the Solo Kill Executor Assassin achievement. In the next moment, Ryuto used his mouth to simulate a congratulatory message from the game. At the same time, he put the video he just shot in front of Filial Piety. In the video, Filial Piety had a strange smile on his face as he stabbed the bag below with the knife. Then, the bag was pulled open, revealing Kai's easily recognizable face. The whole process was very clear and smooth. It could be said that it perfectly showed how the young master of Kamiyoshi killed the executor assassin with one stab. What did this video mean? Even if Filial Piety was stupid, he could immediately understand. I killed the executor? It can't be. Suddenly, Filial Piety's body began to tremble violently. After all, based on his understanding of the executor, if the video fell into their hands, it wouldn't be enough even if he died 100 times. Thus, This playboy suddenly jumped up crazily. With a red face, he rushed towards the phone in Ryuto's hand. Snatch it. Delete the video. I must snatch it. PFFF. But no matter how crazy he was, with his playboy body that had been hollowed out by alcohol and women, it was impossible for him to snatch the phone from Ryuto's hand. Ryuto casually kicked filial piety to the ground again. Is this guy an idiot? It's not like I'm reading a manga. Will a roar cause the universe to explode? After sending filial piety flying with a kick, Ryuto took the phone in front of Colored Glaze and said to her with a smile, "Mission accomplished. Please accept this." Not bad. Now I have something to use to threaten the old bastard. When Luli took the phone, a relaxed expression finally appeared on her face. From the very beginning, the person Colored Glaze wanted to deal with was Komashiro Yoshiyuki, not filial piety Kanzaki. After all, everyone knew that this playboy was a complete piece of trash. He was the type that only knew how to play with women after leaving his father. He was no threat to Colored Glaze. However, Yoshiyuki was different. He wasn't young, and he had experienced many things. His mind was full of evil tricks. More importantly, according to what Colored Glaze knew, Yoshiyuki had taken the initiative to complain to her mother, Ruehue Kanzaki. He had even volunteered to take on the mission of teaching Ryuto a lesson. Colored Glaze's mother, Ruehue, was the previous vegetarian king. After the position of vegetarian king was taken over by her younger sister, Jingyan, she retired and gave birth to Colored Glaze. At the same time, she also took over Kamiyoshi's position. Ever since Colored Glaze was young, Ruehue had been an extremely cold and strict woman. Colored Glaze had never met her own father. In fact, she didn't even know what her father was called or what he looked like. This seemed to be a taboo in Kamiyoshi. It was as if her father never existed. Of course, even if Colored Glaze's father did exist, he probably didn't have any status. After all, the Kamiyoshi clan was a witch clan. Naturally, the females were stronger than the males. Only the males would marry into the clan, while the females wouldn't be married off. In any case, all children born into the clan would be part of Kamiyoshi. That was why Ruehue was in charge of everything in the clan. This also made her personality seem especially domineering. Under such circumstances, Uncle Yoshiyuki ran to complain that Colored Glaze was having an ambiguous relationship with a man outside and even instigated the clan to deal with Ryuto. This made Colored Glaze very frustrated and angry because Colored Glaze couldn't disobey her mother, who was even more domineering than her. Of course, she also knew why Yoshiyuki did this. He was afraid that if something happened to her, something would go wrong with this generation's vegetarian king inheritance, which would lead to the decline of Kamiyoshi. After all, as long as the vegetarian king was around, the Kamiyoshi clan would always be the link between the Mikado clan and the gods. A god's flag could be raised high. Wherever they went, people would give face to the Kamiyoshi. Giving face to Kamiyoshi was the same as giving face to Yoshiyuki. This way, Yoshiyuki would be able to continue swindling others and filling his own pockets. That was why Yoshiyuki paid close attention to any male who had a relationship with Colored Glaze. He wouldn't allow his golden egg to grow wings and fly away. Not long after, at the entrance of this full-body club, a middle-aged man who appeared to be in his 50s finally rushed in with a dozen or so muscular samurai. The heavens finally came. When he saw this familiar customer, the manager who had been waiting at the entrance for a long time hurriedly came over and said, "Hello, young Master Kanzaki. Cut the crap. It's none of your business. Just pretend that you didn't see anything." Seeing that the manager wanted to come over and explain, this member of Kamiyoshi's generation, Komashiro Yoshiyuki, glared at him fiercely and hurriedly ran over to the chrysanthemum room with his men. Actually, when the girls were chased out by Colored Glaze, the full body club members already knew that something seemed to have happened at the chrysanthemum room. However, the person who went in was the eldest daughter of the Kamiyoshi clan. In other words, this was an internal matter of the Kamiyoshi clan. The full body club didn't dare to meddle in other people's business. They could only call Yoshiyuki and inform him. Yoshiyuki was filled with anger as he hurried over. At the same time, he was also worried. Damn it, that bastard called Ryuto Kiryu isn't dead? And he even found the filial piety together with colored glaze? They're not here for revenge, are they? No, that's impossible. He's just a mere extreme Dao. How could he dare to make a move on our Komiyoshi clan's young master? Creek. Before entering the door, although Yoshiyuki was slightly worried, he was still betting that Ryuto wouldn't dare to be so ruthless. However, when the door to the chrysanthemum room opened, Yoshiyuki rushed in with a group of elite samurai behind him, only to see the head of an apple hanging upside down from the ceiling. This description was somewhat strange. After all, why would an apple be hanging from the ceiling? Of course, if one took a closer look, it wasn't difficult to discover that the red, apple-like head belonged to filial piety Kanzaki. And the reason why his head was red was because he was tied up and hung upside down, causing blood to flow to his brain. If this situation continued for too long, the person who was hung upside down would even be in danger. Yo, isn't this Uncle Yoshiyuki? I'm a little late. Colored Glaze was sitting leisurely on a sofa not too far away from the hanging filial piety Kanzaki. She propped up her legs and looked at the group of people who had just barged in. Colored Glaze Kanzaki. How dare you? Seeing that his own son was being treated in such a manner, Yoshiyuki was so angry that his blood vessels almost exploded. He hurriedly shouted at the samurai behind him, "Hurry up! Put the young master down!" Then, all of them. But before Yoshiyuki could finish yelling valiantly, his eyes suddenly widened. That was because a pitch-black gun was pointed at the young master's head right next to the hanging filial piety Kanzaki. As long as the gun's owner pulled the trigger, they would be able to enjoy the scene of the red apple turning into apple bits. All of them. All of what? Speak louder. I can't hear you. At this moment, Ryuto giggled as he knocked filial piety Kanzaki on the head with the gun. Then, he turned around and asked the large piece of trash named Komiyoshi. Chapter 122. Tong Sheng. Ryuto. After realizing what had happened, Yoshiyuki couldn't help but let out a low roar. Of course, he knew the young master of the Rulon group, and even the order to assassinate this guy was given by him. But Kanzaki Yoshihide had never imagined that there would be a day when he would be threatened by this bastard. And it was the second day after the assassination order was issued. As the saying goes, karma comes quickly, but this was a bit too fast. But no matter how angry he was, now that Ryuto pointed a gun at filial piety's head, all the samurai behind him naturally didn't dare to take another step forward, for fear that the young master would become a headless knight. You still have the nerve to call me old man? You should know very well why I'm here, right? Ryudo said mockingly when he saw the ferocious expression on Kanzaki Yoshihiro's face as if he wanted to twist someone's head off. Of course, Yoshiyuki himself was the clearest about this matter. But he still whispered angrily, "Ryuto Kiryu, do you know what you are doing? You are threatening the great Komiyoshi. Aren't you afraid of dying without a burial place? Ha ha ha, as if I will die if I don't threaten you. You didn't prepare a coffin for me when you sent assassins to kill me yesterday. You." Seeing Ryuto laughing presumptuously, Komashiro Yoshiyuki didn't know what to do for a while. After all, Longdo was right. Since you all want to kill me anyway, what's the big deal if we fall out a little more? So Yoshiyuki had to turn his gaze to Colored Glaze, who was sitting leisurely on the sofa. He said in a superior tone unique to elders, "Colored Glaze, you are the young lady of Komiyoshi. How dare you bring an outsider to deal with your own family? Get this guy to release the filial piety right now, and I can pretend that nothing happened." You can pretend that nothing happened? How generous. Colored Glaze smiled, but her eyes were cold. However, Yoshiyuki did not notice her indifference. Instead, he continued, "It's good that you know. I've always been this magnanimous." Really? You can pretend that nothing happened, but I can't. Looking at Komashiro Yoshiyuki's shifty expression, Colored Glaze said sternly, "What I hate the most is people talking behind my back and snitching on me. Who do you think you are? You're nothing more than a parasite that uses Kanzaki's name to do whatever you want." As she spoke, Colored Glaze's murderous intent filled the entire room. She knew that it was Kamishiro Yoshiyuki who told her mother Ruehue about her friendship with Ryuto. She knew that it was Kamishiro Yoshiyuki who secretly changed Ruehue's instruction to teach Ryuto a lesson and stop him from interacting with Colored Glaze to kill Ryuto. She also knew that this uncle of hers had always treated her as a hen that could lay golden eggs. He would do anything to ensure that she became the king. This series of events made Colored Glaze extremely angry. She was so angry that her blood vessels were about to burst. It's already reached this point, and you still want to pretend that nothing happened? Dream on. After being mercilessly scolded by Colored Glaze in front of outsiders, Yoshiyuki's face suddenly turned red. What he hated the most was other people saying that he was Kamiyoshi's parasite, because it was the truth. As a witch family, Kamiyoshi's natural tradition was that women were superior to men. Only a woman who could take over the king position was qualified to hold power. Otherwise, she was just a freeloader. Therefore, although Yoshiyuki and Ruehue were siblings, he could never raise his head in front of his sister and was always submissive. However, Yoshiyuki never expected that not only would he not be able to raise his head in front of Ruehue, he would also be scolded by Colored Glaze. This time, Yoshiyuki couldn't hold it anymore. He said angrily, "Very well, then you mean to completely fall out with me, right? You're the one who wants to fall out with me. Reflect on it before you speak." "Good, very good. Then I'll call Ruehue right now and have her come over to resolve this matter." After saying this, Yoshiyuki quickly took out his cell phone from his pocket and tried to call the head of Kamiyoshi, Ruehue Kanzaki. His son was in her hands. Indeed, he couldn't do anything to Colored Glaze and Ryuto, but Ruehue was different. Yoshiyuki knew that Colored Glaze was most afraid of his mother. He didn't believe that Ruehue couldn't resolve this situation if she came over. But before he could dial the number, Colored Glaze raised her cell phone in front of Yoshiyuki and played the recording. This is... Yoshiyuki couldn't help but widen his eyes when he saw his son ending Kaiser's life with a single slash. "Go ahead and call her. But let me remind you, the moment my mother finds out about this is the moment this recording is spread all over the internet," Colored Glaze said as she waved the cell phone in her hand. The threat was self-evident. This recording? Spread all over the internet? The moment he heard these words, Yoshiyuki gritted his teeth. He seemed to have realized what kind of desperate situation he was in. If this recording wasn't available, the head of Kamiyoshi would only need to arrive at the scene and everything would be over quickly. Under Ruehue's pressure, Colored Glaze could only ask Ryuto to release the hostage. And because she took the initiative to bring Ryuto to cause trouble for her family, she would definitely be severely punished by her mother. At that time, Colored Glaze would be grounded for a few months at best. At worst, she would be expelled from school and placed under house arrest until she reached adulthood. It could be said that she had lost so badly that she didn't even have her underwear. However, with this recording, Yoshiyuki had to consider the serious consequences of calling Ruehue over. If filial piety only killed ordinary people, then with Kamiyoshi's power, there was no problem of not being able to suppress it. But the person he killed in the recording was an assassin from the executor. If this recording was posted on the internet, it would definitely be considered a serious provocation to the executor. At that time, even if filial piety was the young master of Kamiyoshi, he would inevitably be hunted down by the world's top assassin organization. And it would be the kind that wouldn't stop until one of them was dead. It was easy to be a thief for 1,000 days, but difficult to be on guard against a thief for 1,000 days. If filial piety was targeted by the executor, he could only obediently stay at home for the rest of his life. His life was similar to that of a prisoner. After all, he could be assassinated as soon as he stepped out of the house. Wouldn't this kind of life be much worse than Colored Glaze's? He would have to live in fear for the rest of his life. After weighing the pros and cons, Yoshiyuki didn't dare to gamble with his son's life. So he could only take a deep breath and let all the samurai leave the room. Then he said to Colored Glaze, "What do you want? Just say it." Ha 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 ha. This guy actually admitted defeat so quickly? What a cowardly bandit! When he heard Komashiro Yoshiyuki's words, Ryuto couldn't help but laugh on the spot. It was as if he was amused by Yoshiyuki's cowardice. Chapter 123. Actually, even though Colored Glaze and Ryuto were acting like they had victory in their hands, the chances of both sides winning were only 50-50. If the video in Colored Glaze's hands was leaked, it would be disadvantageous, but it wasn't something that couldn't be settled. For example, Yoshiyuki could directly contact the executors on the spot and explain the situation to them. The executors weren't stupid, and they knew that the employer wouldn't do such a thing on their own accord. If that didn't work, they could directly tell Ruehue about it. At worst, they could gather the power of the entire Kamiyoshi to negotiate with the executors on how much money to pay. If that didn't work, even if the executors really didn't want to listen to their explanation, they could think of a way to make filial piety fake his death and change his identity. In any case, if Ryuto and Colored Glaze were on Yoshiyuki's side, they wouldn't choose to admit defeat just because of a video. After all, Yoshiyuki still had Ruehue to rely on. Unfortunately, Yoshiyuki wasn't Ryuto. After all, this guy was just a LV1 courage scumbag. Through Ryuto's hooligan's analytical lens, it could be seen that although this Kamiyoshi uncle looked fierce and domineering on the surface, he was actually a coward. Courage didn't seem to be as useful as the other 4 attributes, but it was actually one of the most useful attributes. Sometimes, being a hero or a coward didn't depend on whether or not one was smart, strong, charismatic, or observant. It really was a question of courage. That pitiful LV1 level of courage wasn't enough to support Yoshiyuki to make some brave and decisive actions. He would only hesitate when making a choice, and would unconsciously choose to retreat after being overwhelmed by the enemy's aura. Fierce and cowardly. This was the perfect description to describe Komashiro Yoshiyuki and filial piety Kanzaki. People like them could act normally, but when it came to serious matters, they couldn't handle it. It was extremely embarrassing. After hearing Ryuto's mocking laughter, Yoshiyuki only glared at him angrily, but he didn't dare to do anything. Colored Glaze smiled and said, "My goal is very simple. Do you remember what happened yesterday and today?" Yesterday and today? Yesterday, you sent people to teach Ryuto a lesson, and he won't come near me again. Today, nothing happened. It's that simple. At this point, Colored Glaze shrugged. At the same time, she looked at Seiji's eyes. "Ah, I see. As planning to help me hide this from Ruehue?" Although Yoshiyuki wasn't very brave, he had been around for so many years, so he understood some of the deeper meaning behind her words. To put it simply, Colored Glaze wanted Yoshiyuki to go back and report false information to Ruehue, saying that he had already dealt with Ryuto, and that Kamiyoshi shouldn't waste his time on this guy anymore. This way, Ryuto could escape and wouldn't be watched by Kamiyoshi anymore. Secondly, Colored Glaze wouldn't have to worry about this matter anymore. Thirdly, Yoshiyuki could also save his son. Everyone would be happy. Of course, this happy ending was equivalent to the complete failure of Yoshiyuki's plan. He understood this. If he really did this, it would be equivalent to him spending money to hire an assassin for nothing. He would have to watch his son get abused for nothing, and he would also be scolded and ridiculed for nothing. In the end, he wouldn't be able to get anything. However, the only advantage of doing this was that he could definitely save his son's life. Thus, after Yoshiyuki thought for a few seconds, he could only nod helplessly and agree to Colored Glaze's request. This was obviously within Colored Glaze's expectations. She added, "I'll save this video on the cloud. If you don't mention this in the future, I won't mention it again, and I won't use it to threaten you. That's all." After saying this, Colored Glaze gave Ryuto a look. Ryuto casually cut the rope and released Kanzaki filial piety, who had been hanging from the ceiling for a long time. Ugh. Filial piety. Are you all right, father? Woo. When Yoshiyuki rushed towards his filial son, the latter immediately reached out and hugged his father, crying loudly as if he was crying for the pain and grievances he had suffered. Of course, if he had the chance to be thrown into a furnace by Ayam in the future and burned alive, who knew if this filial son's cries would be even more tragic than now. Ryuto and Colored Glaze naturally couldn't be bothered to listen to his disgusting cries, so they immediately left the room after releasing him. Dancing Costume had already left to deal with Kaiser's corpse. This assassin incident finally came to an end for the time being. Phew, what an unexpected calamity. I'm sorry, I've caused you a lot of trouble. Colored Glaze couldn't help but say this to Ryuto as they left the Full Body Club and headed towards the familiar Rulon Group headquarters. Although Ryuto didn't explain in detail how he had captured Kaiser, judging from the elite level of the executors, it wasn't difficult for Colored Glaze to imagine what kind of dangerous battles he had experienced. However, Ryuto laughed and said, "You're treating me like an outsider. Actually, I was the one who wanted to get involved from the very beginning. After all, I was lusting after your body." "Humph, you're going to start a dye factory just because I gave you some color, you stinky man." Colored Glaze's white face couldn't help but redden slightly when she heard the words, "I was lusting after your body." It was obvious that she wasn't used to this slightly colored way of talking. As the car slowly drove towards the Rulon Group headquarters, the Kanzaki father and son on the other side of the car also dragged everyone back to the place where their family lived, Kanzaki's Imperial Park. Speaking of Kanzaki's Imperial Park, it was a rather mysterious place in Tokyo. Unlike the Kanzaki residence that Colored Glaze temporarily stayed in for the sake of going to school, Kanzaki's Imperial Park was located in the middle of a rather quiet and elegant lake in the outskirts of Tokyo. When they arrived at the lakeside, they could see many simple bronze statues and ancient divine trees that had a rich historical feel to them. There was a large residence in the middle of the lakeside that was surrounded by the lake. The scenery was beautiful. Kanzaki's Imperial Park itself looked like a large shrine, except that the decorations were more extravagant and luxurious. And compared to other shrines, the white jade torii, made of pure white jade, was placed at the entrance of Kanzaki's Imperial Park, which symbolized its unique status among the shrines. Later that afternoon, the owner of Kanzaki's Imperial Park, Kanzaki Rui, was in her office dealing with some daily business. Although the style of this building was extremely simple and sacred, the interior of the main office was quite modern. There were computers, telephones, projectors, and so on. However, even in such a modern office, Rui Hui was still used to wearing a pure white witch robe. This set off her perfect figure and beautiful face, making her look even more holy. Chapter 124. As the mother of the beautiful Kanzaki Colored Glaze, Kanzaki Ruehue's appearance was 70 to 80% similar to Colored Glaze. Both of them were great beauties with classic beauty. Compared to the 16-year-old Colored Glaze, Ruehue's facial features were sharper and her figure was more voluptuous. She even exuded the unique charm of a mature woman. Even though Ruehue was now over 50 years old, her skin was still firm and delicate, and there were no wrinkles on her face. If she stood next to Colored Glaze, it wouldn't be strange to say that they were sisters. Time didn't seem to have left too many traces on her body. Instead, it brought her a kind of settled beauty, a kind of feminine beauty that was more captivating to men than a little girl. At this very moment, Rue Hui was bent over the table and writing rapidly. Her slender and fair hand was holding an elegant crane brush, leaving beautiful handwriting on a file. Ding! Suddenly, the bell-shaped communication device beside Ruehue's table made a light sound. She immediately pressed the button on the communication device. A steady voice came from the communication device. The voice said, "Ruehue-sama, Yoshiyuki-sama requests an audience." "Let him in." "Yes. Brother actually came looking for me at this time. Is it because of the Colored Glaze incident yesterday?" The beautiful woman put down the pen in her hand and glanced at the picture frame on the table with an obvious sense of vicissitudes of life. The girl in the picture frame who looked similar to her had an impatient expression. But even though both sides didn't have good feelings towards each other, in Ruehue's eyes, the girl in the picture was still her treasure. After a while, Kamishiro Yoshiyuki, who had returned from the Full Body Club, slowly pushed open the door and walked in. Unlike the high-spirited Yoshiyuki before, the current Yoshiyuki gave people the feeling that he was in a difficult situation. However, Anyone who knew the inside story wouldn't find it difficult to understand his current mood. After glancing at her brother who was related to her by blood, Ruehue lowered her head and continued to work. At the same time she asked, "What is it? Do you need something from me?" "About that. I've already taken care of the matter from yesterday." Facing the master of Kamiyoshi, Yoshiyuki couldn't help but stand on his heels and slightly bend his waist, putting on a serious appearance when meeting with a superior. If one didn't know their identities, it would be hard to imagine that this was actually a pair of siblings talking. No matter how one looked at it, it felt like a forceful female boss and an incompetent and stupid subordinate. "It's been dealt with. That means you've already warned that hooligan Ryuto Kiryu, right?" "That's right, he won't go near the colored glaze again. You can rest assured about that." After hearing this, the pen in Ruehui's hand paused. Her eyes, which seemed to contain magic, swept towards Yoshiyuki. Yoshiyuki felt his scalp go numb when this gaze swept over him. He couldn't help but have the thought of running away on the spot. Ever since he was very young, he couldn't understand what kind of creature his sister Ruehui was. Especially after Ruehui took over the position of Heavenly King and stayed in the Heavenly Palace for 20 years. After leaving the Heavenly Palace, she became even more terrifying in all aspects. Monster. She was simply a monster. She must have been possessed by something. More than once, Yi Xing had thought that Ruehui was a monster, or a similar existence, because it was impossible for a normal human to have such a level of aura. After staring at Yoshiyuki with that terrifying gaze for a few seconds, Ruehui said lightly, "Thank you for your hard work. Go and rest." "Yes." Instantly, Yoshiyuki felt as if he had been pardoned. When he left the office, he felt that his footsteps were lighter. It was as if not having to deal with Ruehui was the most enjoyable thing in the world. When Yoshiyuki reported to the Lord of Kamiyoshi, it seemed like the whole thing had come to an end. However, that wasn't the case. When the middle-aged man's figure disappeared, Ruehui pressed another button on the table. Whoosh! Accompanied by a gust of wind and a black shadow, an old butler with a head full of silver hair was already half kneeling in front of the table. "Ruehui-sama, what orders do you have?" In front of this Kamiyoshi, the guardian ninja, who had a dispute with Ryuto, Tomoya Bunkamaru, respectfully lowered his head. Ruehui sighed lightly and asked Bunkamaru as if nothing had happened, "You've seen that young man called Ryuto Kiryu, right? What kind of person is he?" "A person who is brave and resourceful, and extremely daring." "Oh, so that's how it is. Then do you think my good-for-nothing brother can deal with that young man?" "He can't." From the feedback from the samurai that I arranged around Master Yoshiyuki seems to have suffered a great loss at the hands of young Master Ryuto and Colored Glaze-san. Just like Ruehui, Bunkamaru's tone was very calm, but the words that came out of his mouth were very shocking. If Yi Xing was here at this time, he would definitely be scared to the point that all the hairs on his body would stand up. After all, that idiot had always thought that the dozen or so Wu warriors that he had nurtured as his trusted subordinates were truly loyal to him and would not leak the information that he had ordered them to keep their mouths shut. But in reality, all of the Kamiyoshi and Guardian Ninja were trained by Tomoya Bunkamaru, and the only person that they were loyal to was Ruehui alone. From this angle, Yoshiyuki was like a monkey dancing on the palm of Buddha, unable to escape from Ruehui's palm. The worst thing was that he did not even know about it. Colored Glaze has really grown up, to be able to be so cruel to her family. It seems that she will become a better leader than me in the future. After listening to Bunkamaru's report, Ruehui nodded in praise, as if she was very satisfied with Colored Glaze's actions. In the Kamiyoshi tribe, there was a difference between the family head and the leader. The position of family head was always held by the face of the family, the current Zaiho. This was the true signature of the Kamiyoshi. But because Zaiho usually stayed in the shrine to pray for the people, he could not easily leave unless there was something important to do. That was why the person with the most power in the family was actually the leader. Some family heads could become the leader after they retired, while some couldn't. In the end, it all depended on the person's ability. Rue Hui Kamiyoshi was obviously one of those people with ability, and she felt that her daughter, Colored Glaze, would be the same as her. Rue Hui believed that Colored Glaze would understand this principle and would definitely understand it. And so, Rue Hui instructed Bunkamaru, ignore that boy called Ryuto for now. Instead, strengthen the protection around Colored Glaze. We definitely can't let the previous incident happen again, understand? Chapter 125. The previous incident that Rue Hui mentioned was actually the Colored Glaze kidnapping incident a few weeks ago. Although on the surface, it was just a power struggle within the Rulon group, in fact, it was the Heavenly Eye group that led the whole incident. In order to successfully kidnap the Colored Glaze, the Heavenly Eye group did not hesitate to expose several spies planted in the Kamiyoshi for many years. After paying a heavy price, they completed the kidnapping. Fortunately, the Colored Glaze was blessed by God, and the boy named Ryuto was also quite sensible. In the end, this vicious incident was averted. And after that, Rabbit Ball also gave him a shot to ensure that Ryuto would not become a male creature that could threaten the young lady. That was enough. But from Rue Hui's point of view, this level of accident was absolutely not allowed to happen a second time, especially at this critical moment in the competition with the Heavenly Eye group. Please rest assured, Lord Rue Hui, there are already 5 guardian ninjas, taking turns to protect the young lady day and night. The spies planted by the Heavenly Eye group here have almost been cleaned up. The same thing will not happen again. When talking about this matter, Rabbit Ball couldn't help but feel a little guilty, but he still patted his chest and promised. That's good. Recently, the Heavenly Eye group and the Sai-Tu Guild have been fighting happily. We have to focus on the latter, and we don't have much time to deal with internal problems. When speaking of the name Sai-Tu Guild, Rue Hui's attitude seemed to be the same as Colored Glaze's. Both mother and daughter believed that although Sai-Tu had a large number of people and was powerful, because of their stupidity, they couldn't fight with Iam at all. If the Kamiyoshi didn't help, the Sai-Tu Guild would definitely suffer a lot, and they might even be killed by Iam. Therefore, Rue Hui actually had a headache talking about this matter. After all, a strong opponent was not as disgusting as a retarded teammate. There were already plenty of retarded teammates in this country. Now that Sai-Tu was added to the list, it was quite tiring. Speaking of Zhai Tang Guild Hall, their 300th anniversary celebration will be held in a week. The invitation letter has been sent. What do you plan to do, Rue Hui Darren? What kind of celebration is this when the Heavenly Eye is watching them? They're really tired of living. Let Yoshiyuki go. He's also a member of Kamiyoshi, so he'll still be of some use. Yes, then I'll arrange for Lord Yoshiyuki to participate. Lord Yoshiyuki's life was also a life. This understanding didn't seem to exist in Yu Ruehue and Bunkamaru's hearts. They could only pray that the unlucky Kamiyoshi was lucky enough to not die in that celebration. With Rue Hui's order, the drama involving the grudge between the Kamiyoshi clan and the Rulon group came to an end. However, as time went by, another stormy drama seemed to be progressing. Of course, this drama had nothing to do with Ryuto for the time being. Now he was immersed in the shock of his lovely girlfriend making lunch for him. At noon the next day, Ryuto did not go to eat with the Colored Glaze. Instead, he went to the rooftop of the teaching building under the lead of Yunyen. The weather is quite good today, let's eat here. When pushing open the door of the rooftop, Yunyen smiled and said to Ryuto behind her. She was in a good mood today, and there was always a happy smile on her face. This allowed senior sister Yunyen's extraordinary charm to be fully displayed. She was like a young girl in love. Of course, Yunyen was now a girl in love. After all, she just caught her first boyfriend 2 days ago. In Yunyen's view, making a bento for her boyfriend should be an indispensable part of a relationship. Therefore, she deliberately got up early today and asked Ryuto to have lunch together. It was quite thoughtful. Is it, haha? However, even if he encountered such a good thing, the expression on Ryuto's face was quite complicated. It was an expression mixed with a series of strange emotions such as joy, fear, anxiety, nervousness, timidity, and so on. How to describe it? Logically speaking, now that Ryuto and Yunyen were in a relationship, the bento made for him by his girlfriend should be delicious, right? However, if this bento was not made by Yunyen herself, Ryuto would definitely feel very happy. If it was made by her, the feeling was not the same. Ordinary girls making bento for their boyfriends belong to the sweet relationship between boys and girls. However, if senior sister Yunyen made a bento for her boyfriend, it would be considered a sweet murder case. After all, Ryuto was clear about the fact that Yunyen didn't know how to cook. After all, she was a young lady. She must be the kind of person who didn't do household chores. This was actually fine. The most terrifying thing was that he also knew another fact, that was, Yunyen's definition of food was quite strange. Don't forget, she was a woman who could write a plot of, the heroine chose to go to the silverware store to buy silver jewelry in order to make chocolate for her crush. After melting the silver, she plated it on the chocolate and fed it to her boyfriend. Such a woman who didn't know how to cook and had a strange definition of food could give her boyfriend what kind of bento made with love. It was basically possible to meet. It's over, I won't suddenly die on the spot after eating this meal, right? But if Yunyen also eats the same thing, she shouldn't be too cruel to me, right? Seeing Yunyen spread a carpet on the ground over there and took out 2 lunch boxes from the bag, Ryuto couldn't help but swallow a mouthful of saliva. After the two sat down, Yunyen raised a blue lunchbox and handed it over. She smiled and said, "Ryuto, this is yours, eat quickly." After Ryuto took the lunchbox, he pretended to be ecstatic and opened it. Then, a set of very common Japanese lunch combination appeared in front of his eyes. Yellow omelets, cute octopus sausages, emerald green broccoli, fried chicken wrapped in sauce, and a portion of rice made up senior sister Yunyan's handmade lunch. This looks quite normal? After seeing the contents of the lunchbox, Ryuto suddenly breathed a sigh of relief. He immediately picked up the chopsticks and put a piece of omelette into his mouth. The omelette was crispy on the outside and tender on the inside. After biting it, the strong spiciness gushed out like the flowing water of the Yangtze River. It was as if dozens of strong men were taking turns to beat Ryuto's mouth and nose with their fists. So spicy. Super spicy. It's not a normal spiciness. It's not a spiciness that humans can bear. Puff. At the moment of chewing, Ryuto almost spat out the omelette on the spot, but because Yunyen was looking at him with a smile, he could only force it down. After reluctantly swallowing it, Ryuto felt the burning in his mouth and stomach. He reluctantly asked, That Yunyen? Did you add any special seasoning to the omelette? You can taste it?" Yunyen clapped her hands and smiled. "I think ordinary omelettes are too boring, so I added a little Carolina Reaper chili. It can make the whole body warm, right?" Chapter 126. Carolina Reaper Chili was the hottest chili that could be bought in the world. Its spiciness exceeded the level of most police chili water. It could even be used as a military chili bomb, which could effortlessly disable the enemy's combat ability. After eating the omelette wrapped in this chili, Ryuto resisted the burning sensation in his mouth and smiled bitterly. "It's really warm, like it's on fire." "Really? That's great. Try the other dishes as well. There are surprises for you." When she saw Ryuto's happy smile, Yunyen felt that her efforts in the morning were recognized. She seemed to be happier than him. "This surprise? There are surprises?" When he heard this sentence, the smile on Ryuto's face became more intense. It was pronounced as surprise, but written as shock. Although he knew that Yunyen didn't know how to cook, he didn't expect this girl's brain circuit to be so weird. The scariest thing was that when Ryuto saw Yunyen open her lunchbox, there were only a few small tofu skin rice balls inside. "Yunyen, your lunch seems to be different from mine?" "Well, because I've been on a diet recently, I can only eat a little diet meal at noon, hee." Speaking of this, Yunyen scratched her head embarrassedly. After all, she was a teenage girl. She would make some sacrifices for her weight. Of course, when it came to the word sacrifice, No one was more sacrificing than Ryuto now. He held the lunchbox that was still warm in his hand. He felt like he was holding a time bomb. The omelette looked normal on the surface, but in fact, there was Carolina Reaper chili in it. With such a refreshing food as the beginning, the taste of the following dishes could be imagined. But there shouldn't be any problem with the broccoli. There shouldn't be any weird seasoning. It was Ryuto. He had to use his chopsticks to pick the circle of broccoli placed on the edge of the lunchbox. But when he picked it up, he found that the emerald green on it seemed to be unnatural. How should he put it? Although broccoli was green, it shouldn't be so green that it was shining with a metallic luster. Yunyen, what did you add to the broccoli? Oh, this is my secret recipe. I've added malachite green to it, which can make the vegetables even more verdant. Isn't it beautiful? Note: malachite green, molecular formula C23H25ClN2, is a synthetic organic compound. It is a toxic triphenylmethane chemical. It is not only a dye, but also a fungicidal, bactericidal, and parasitic drug. Are you King kidding me? Can the food in this lunchbox be eaten? Looking at the deadly green broccoli, Ryuto didn't even want to know what was added to the rice, chicken pieces, and sausages. No matter what, they were not for human consumption. What to do? Do you want me to eat everything in this lunchbox in front of Ryuto-senpai? Then die on the spot in front of her after eating? If someone else gave him such a poisonous food, Ryuto would definitely throw it into the smelly ditch on the spot. But when he thought that Yunyen woke up early in the morning to make it for him, he didn't have the heart to do it. At least, he couldn't do it in front of Yunyen. Crunch. However, just when Ryuto was holding his chopsticks in a dilemma, the door of the rooftop not far away was suddenly pushed open. TSK, did someone come first? The person who pushed open the door was a very petite girl. When she saw someone on the rooftop, she couldn't help but snort, then turned around and planned to leave. But Yunyen's sharp eyes saw the silver twin tails and immediately shouted, "Wait, is that Dunya? How about eating together?" In this school, the only female student with such a special hair color was naturally Sai-2 Dunya, who transferred not long ago. For some reason, Dunya came to the rooftop alone at noon to prepare for lunch, and she just happened to bump into Yunyen and Ryuto's party. Is that Yunyen? So troublesome. After being stopped by Yunyen, Dunya, who was about to run away, could only frown and turn around to walk in that direction. However, Dunya's appearance gave Ryuto a great opportunity to escape. While Yunyen's attention was focused on Dunya, he quickly put all the side dishes in the lunchbox except for the egg roll into his kettle. It was great to have a habit of bringing his own kettle, otherwise, he would probably die here. Looking at Dunya, who hesitantly walked over, Longdo couldn't help but smile and nod at her with an expression as if he saw an angel descending from the heavens. Dunya's appearance did save Ryuto, but she definitely still couldn't understand why this male student was smiling so disgustingly. What is this guy doing? Why is he smiling like this? Is there something wrong with his brain? And why is he eating lunch with Yunyen? Could it be that the two of them? No way. Dunya didn't believe that Yunyen and Ryuto would have that kind of relationship, just like how she didn't believe that a golden cat would be together with a dung beetle. But when she came to Yunyen and Ryuto, Dunya still showed a professional fake smile and asked with a smile, "So it's Yunyen and Ryuto-senpai, am I disturbing you too?" How could it be? It's more lively to eat with more people, right Ryuto? That's right, sit down, don't be shy. Yunyen naturally welcomed Dunya's arrival. After all, she also liked Dunya. In Yunyen's view, this child was prettier than a doll. If she could change her clothes, it would be more fun than the most high-end doll. As for Ryuto, he had long regarded Dunya as his concubine, so he naturally welcomed her arrival. However, after Dong Nia sat down, she looked at the lunchbox in senior sister Yunyen's hands, which only had a few small rice balls left, and then looked at the lunchbox in Longdo's hands, which only had rice and egg rolls left. What's wrong with these two guys? Why are they so poor? They only eat this for lunch? After secretly complaining, Dunya opened her big lunchbox. It was full of meat sausages, stewed beef, pickled cucumbers, and potatoes. This lunchbox was more than twice the amount of Ryuto and Yunyen combined, and it was stuffed full of meat. It could be called a calorie bomb. How to put it, this lunchbox was really not girly at all. It looked like something a burly bear would eat when doing heavy work outside. So that's why she came to the rooftop alone to eat so much food. She didn't want to be seen by her classmates. However, just when Ryuto looked at Dunya's lunchbox, Yunyen also showed a surprised expression, as if she was shocked by the huge calorie bomb. Chapter 127. It was no exaggeration to say that Dunya's meal should be enough for Yunyen to eat for a day, and there would be more. So Yunyen couldn't help but ask, "Dunya, do you eat so much every meal every day?" "Yes." "Yes, I will be hungry if I don't eat more. I can't help it." When hearing Yunyen's words, Dunya instinctively tilted the lunchbox to the side, and her tone was somewhat conflicted. Because of Dunya's special physique, the energy she needed to consume every day was much more than the average person. Therefore, every meal was several times more than the average person. For this situation, Dunya also felt a little troubled, but over time, she got used to it. At most, she would be looked at strangely by others. It was not like she had never been looked at before. "If you don't like it, come and beat me, bastard." Since she came to Tokyo from her hometown in the north, no matter where she appeared, she would be stared at by others with different expressions, but this was also something that couldn't be helped. "Laugh, laugh, if you want to make fun of me, humph." Like a broken jar, Dunya used a fork to pick up a piece of stewed beef and stuffed it into her mouth. She ate it with relish as if it was delicious. However, Yunyen naturally wouldn't laugh at her. Instead, she said enviously, "It's amazing. You eat so much, but your body is still so slim. This kind of physique is really good." Is it? Actually, there is nothing good about it." After being praised, Dunya showed an expression that she wanted to laugh but was embarrassed to laugh. She looked even more awkward. Yes, the word awkward should be the best adjective for Saitu Dunya. After all, she was very awkward from head to toe, inside and outside. She was obviously a cute loli, but inside, she was a strong bear. She was obviously the young lady of an ancient martial arts family, but she was a silver-haired outsider. She obviously yearned for things like family, friendship, love, and so on, but she didn't care about it. Of course, the main reason for the birth of such an awkward and contradictory body was the external environment and innate factors. Dunya herself was not a big problem. Fortunately, the first person Dunya met after coming to this school was Yunyen, a person who was very charming and easy to get along with. Thus, the two beautiful girls chatted as they ate, while Ryuto pretended to eat and listen. The atmosphere on the rooftop was quite harmonious. However, because she wasn't familiar with Ryuto, Dunya usually didn't take the initiative to talk to him. It could even be said that she treated him like air, which made Ryuto feel a little awkward. "By the way, Dunya, your Saitu Club's anniversary celebration will begin in 6 days, right? I've also received an invitation." Just as the meal was about to end, Yunyen suddenly thought of something and brought up this topic. Speaking of which, the 300th anniversary celebration of the Saitu Club was quite a grand event. In addition to Yunyen, most of the rich families in Tokyo and even in the country had also received an invitation. Even the party in charge of the celebration, the Tokyo Emperor Hotel, had already started decorating a few days ago, striving to achieve a satisfactory result for everyone. However, compared to Yunyen's happiness, Dunya was obviously not interested in this event. She just said lightly, "We'll talk about it when the time comes. I'm not sure if I'll appear at the venue." "Hey, Dunya, aren't you the young lady of the Saitu Club?" "Why?" I don't know who my family offended, but recently, my bodyguards have been very cautious. I don't think they'll allow me to appear in public." Thinking of what happened to her recently, Dunya couldn't help but sigh. It was fine when she was studying in the Dori First High School, but it was really bad outside. If there was a slight disturbance, 3 to 5 bodyguards would immediately rush out. That posture could scare people to death. Of course, Ryuto was very clear about why Dunya's bodyguards were like this, because recently, the Sai 2 Club and the Tenmu group were fighting. With Tenmu Ayam's style, it was not difficult to imagine that she would not hesitate to make a move on Dunya, the young lady. As the saying goes, it's easy to block a spear in the open, but difficult to block a hidden arrow. The Tenmu group specialized in shooting arrows in the dark, which would scare people to death. But from this point of view, the president of the Sai 2 Club didn't seem to be an idiot. At least, he knew to greatly strengthen the security measures around Dunya, so that his daughter would not disappear without knowing what happened. After this meal, time returned to its normal flow. Long Do skipped classes as usual in the afternoon and came to Ru Long Security Company to mingle with the staff there. It was a happy and harmonious atmosphere. Recently, the first security task introduced by Gao Yuan had been successfully completed. Under the protection of a group of elites, no one would throw death letters and chicken blood into the poor boss garage. Of course, things like throwing death letters and chicken blood were originally done by the brothers of the Tokyo Second Pig Factory. As long as the boss handed over the money, naturally no one would harass him again. This first transaction successfully earned 5 million yen for the company. Although the money was not much, it was a good start. Next, as long as they gained a little fame, Gao Yuan could use this fame to encircle most of the rich people in Tokyo into the pig farm and slaughter them at will. In addition, the task of discrediting other Tokyo security companies was also ongoing. After a period of activities, the Rulong Group successfully destroyed more than a dozen security tasks of other companies, and with the help of Sensible, these results quickly spread throughout the internet. For a time, the smoke of gunpowder was everywhere in Tokyo, and everyone smelled the scent of insecurity. The more money one had, the more one was afraid of death, and the more one was afraid of death, the more one wanted to hire people to protect oneself. In this way, the Rulong Security Company was also rapidly moving forward on the previously scheduled track. Everything was quite smooth. As for Long Do himself, he had been living a carefree life these few days. During the day, he went to school to improve his relationship with the Colored Glaze and Yun Yen. In the afternoon, he went to the Rulong Security Company to eat and drink with his brothers. At night, he went to the streets and alleys to mingle with the stinky hooligans. Originally, Ryuto also wanted to go to the Sai River Underground Arena to continue to make money. This way, he could make money faster. But the competition there required time, and he couldn't fight whenever he wanted. Therefore, he could only continue to find trouble with the hooligans. Unknowingly, 5 days passed quickly. There were less than 24 hours left before the Saito Club was about to hold a large-scale celebration. This large-scale celebration originally had nothing to do with Ryuto, and with his identity, it was naturally impossible for him to receive an invitation. But on that night, a phone call marked with an unknown number involved Ryuto in the center of the dispute involving several major forces. Unknown number. Is it a salesman? At that time, Ryuto had just taken a shower and was about to change into his night clothes to beat up children. But when he picked up the phone, a creepy voice came from the phone. Hi, Ryuto, Kuan, long time no see. No, we haven't actually met, humph. The next second, a young and deep female voice came from the phone. Hearing her voice was like listening to a whisper from the abyss on a moonless night. There was only one woman in the world with such a strange voice and aura. She was none other than the pure evil, eternal Princess Amamiya. Chapter 128. When he heard Ayam's familiar voice, Ryuto's body couldn't help but tremble. Her voice was absolutely unique in the world. Anyone who had heard it would never forget it. After all, there was no other poisonous man-eating flower in the world that was as rotten as this. What's going on? Why did Ayam call me? Ryuto wasn't surprised that Ayam could find his phone number. He was just surprised why she called. From any point of view, Ryuto and Ayam had nothing to talk about. The latter carefully arranged a murder plan for the former. After it failed, she sent people to the school to kidnap him and tried to bring him back to the tower to torture him like a dog. Ayam was a very single-minded person. If she wanted to kill someone, she would never let it go. However, because the Tenmu Group, Sai-2 Club, and Kamiyoshi Clan were in a period of open and secret struggle, Ayam didn't continue to deal with Ryuto for the time being and let him live freely for a few days. But what did Yongji mean by calling him now? Like Yunyen, she wanted to chat with Ryuto? Of course not, right? Before Ryuto could react, Ayam had already giggled and said, "You seem to be very sure of who I am, and you know me very well, even though we have never seen each other and even talked for the first time." Just through a few seconds of silence, Ayam had already figured out a lot of things. For example, Tong Shang Ryudu had indeed heard her voice and knew who she was. He also knew that if she called him, it meant that something bad was going to happen. From this point of view, Ayam was sure that she didn't find the wrong person. Ryuto Kiryu was indeed a very interesting kid. At this time, Ryuto also took a deep breath and asked seriously, "Tenmu Ayam, why did you call?" "Oh, you're really cold. Can't I call to chat with you?" Suddenly, Ayam's tone became sweet, like a cute girl in her teens. "Don't talk nonsense. If you have something to say, just say it." "I don't buy it. Your attitude towards women is really bad. Did you learn it from your father? It's not easy to have such a simple Ji-Dao hero. I thought Ji-Dao was a dog raised by politicians." "Not bad, it's worth encouraging." "Is your way of encouraging people to go to prison?" "Ha ha ha, it seems that there is such a thing." "How many years was he sentenced?" 30 years? 50 years? It doesn't matter, anyway, he doesn't have many days left." At last, Ayam couldn't help but laugh. Laughter, but in Ryuto's ears, sounded like a devil was having a carnival. "Doesn't have many days left? My father, Terusei Kazuma?" After hearing this sentence, Ryuto couldn't help but frown. He said as calmly as possible, "Are you saying that you can take my father's life at any time?" "NN, it seems to be the case. You can be taught." "I don't think Terusei Kazuma is a person who can be killed easily. If he is outside, it is true, but it's hard to say in the nesting duck prison. After all, even if he is Superman and is not afraid of knives and guns, he can't eat and drink, right? UF*Ker. Can you be more despicable?" Suddenly, Ryuto couldn't help but feel a chill in his heart. After all, Ayam had already made it very clear. Now Terusei Kazuma was serving his sentence in the nesting duck prison. If Ayam bribed the people in the prison, it was really not difficult to kill Kazuma. Even if Kazuma's physique and strength were extraordinary, and he could block all kinds of insidious assassinations, as long as he was a living person, he couldn't escape from the food and drink. Therefore, as long as a little ingredient was added to Kazuma's food and drink, the leader of the Rulon group could only choose between starvation and poisoning. After a few seconds of silence, Ryuto couldn't help but ask, "What do you want?" With Ayam's character, if she really wanted to kill Kazuma, she would never call to warn him in advance. The reason why she made this call was definitely to use this matter to blackmail him. As for what the blackmail was, it was hard to say. The woman on the other side of the phone also chuckled and said, "Straightforward. Tomorrow, the Saito Club seems to be preparing for a large-scale celebration of the 300th anniversary of the establishment. It is very lively. Are you going to send me to cause trouble?" "I don't want to cause trouble. I just want to play a game with you." "Are you going to lock me in a secret room full of killing machines?" "Ha ha ha, you are really humorous. In fact, I just want to ask you to bring the eldest daughter of the Saito family, Dunya, to accompany me. Just treat it as a sneaking game. Is it fun?" Ayam said this lightly, but in Ryuto's ears, it was very heavy. "So that's how it is. This bastard actually wants me to kidnap Dunya? And at the 300th anniversary of the establishment of the Saito Club?" The large-scale celebration event that was about to be held at the Tokyo Emperor Hotel had already become a hot topic in the entire Tokyo circle recently. A certain famous family was going to attend, a certain star was going to appear, a certain star was invited to perform. Similar rumors had already been flying everywhere, and most of them were not rumors but facts. For example, the Tsukujiri Corporation, which represented the strongest technological level in the country, received an invitation early, and their eldest daughter, Yunyen Tsukujiri, would attend. Also, the Kamiyoshi clan, which represented the top political status in the country, also announced that they would send their direct members to participate in the celebration. According to Colored Glaze, the representative of the family seemed to be Yoshiyuki. From the importance of this celebration and the identity of the guests, it was not difficult to guess how strict the security of this celebration would be. The Saito Club was such a behemoth, so it was inevitable that they would do their best to ensure that nothing would go wrong. So Ryuto couldn't help but sneer, "Are you going to send me to my death?" In such a huge celebration, I am actually asked Ryuto to kidnap the eldest daughter of the Saito family, Dunya. Wasn't this sending him to his death? Don't worry, I tried to kill you twice before but failed. From this point, I can see that your life is as hard as steel. You shouldn't die in the hands of that group of trash. What a good shouldn't. But it doesn't seem like I'm in a position to bargain, right? That's right, I'm not here to discuss with you, I'm just going to kindly inform you of a fact. Either you send Dunya here, or you prepare for your father's funeral, it's that simple, bye-bye. After leaving a friendly farewell, Ayam casually hung up the phone, leaving Ryuto standing there alone with the phone in his hand. That damn thing. To think that he would suddenly do something like this. Well done. It was not that Ryuto didn't think that Ayam would cause trouble at the Saito Club's large-scale celebration, but he didn't think that guy would actually use him to cause trouble. Now, he could either kidnap Dunya and give her to Ayam, or watch his father be killed in prison. These two situations were absolutely unacceptable to Ryuto. He couldn't watch his own blood relatives die, and it was even more impossible to personally give his little wife to the enemy. So Ryuto's face was uncertain, as if he was struggling in his mind, but after a few minutes, he calmed down and quickly sent a few text messages. "Bastard, since you want to play, I'll play with you. Let's see who will have the last laugh in this game." Seeing the rapid replies on the phone, "I'll be there soon," Ryuto took a deep breath, reached out and patted his cheek, and prepared to welcome this super vicious event that was destined to be recorded in history with his companions. Chapter 129. The current situation was undoubtedly terrible for Ryuto. His father, Kiryu Kazuma, was being targeted by Tenmu Ayam in prison and could die at any time. If he really kidnapped Dunya at the banquet tomorrow, then Dunya would most likely die, and Ryuto would be labeled as a kidnapper and spend the rest of his life like a rat. The worst thing was that there were less than 24 hours until the large-scale banquet. To be precise, there were only about 21 hours left. Therefore, he had to find a way for himself, Dunya, and Kazuma to survive within 21 hours. So that's how it is. What a terrifying situation. Half an hour later, Yunyen, who was in the top left corner of the tablet screen, was so scared that her face turned pale. She had never seen such a big scene before. "I didn't expect the people from Tenmu Group to be so vicious. I feel like no matter what boss chooses, he will die. Isn't that right? The most important thing is that even if he follows their instructions, they might not let Kazuma-san go." Suddenly, Sensible, Goro, and Masato Takayama, who were in the top right and bottom right corners of the tablet screen, couldn't help but speak. Both of them felt their scalps tingle. Compared to the other three people in the video conference, Colored Glaze, who was in the bottom left corner of the screen, was much calmer. Colored Glaze, Tsukini, Yunyen, Takayama Masato, and Sensible, Goro. These were all the members that Ryuto had just gathered to participate in this video conference. Whether this matter could be resolved smoothly, other than depending on Ryuto's own efforts, the help of these four companions was also indispensable. Now that time was tight, they had to come up with a reliable plan as soon as possible. However, because it was inconvenient for Colored Glaze and Yunyen to come out at night, they could only use a video conference to discuss the matter. At this moment, the calmest person in the room, Colored Glaze, finally opened her mouth and said, "Ahem, Ryuto, first of all, what are your thoughts on this matter?" Ryuto also said, "My idea is to let you be in charge of the plan, and I and the others will be in charge of executing it. What do you think, Miss Colored Glaze?" Even though Ryuto had added wisdom, he was still not on the same level as Colored Glaze. It was better to let Colored Glaze be in charge of planning. Hearing this, Colored Glaze revealed a teasing smile and asked with a smile, "You're not worried about leaving such an important matter to me? If things go wrong, a lot of people will die." "Of course, don't worry. With you in charge of drawing up the plan and a few of us in charge of carrying it out, there's nothing in the world that can stop us." Ryuto looked at the 4 figures that appeared on the tablet. His tone was full of confidence. He doesn't seem to be afraid of death at all? Forget it. This guy has always been this kind of strange person. After being shocked by Ryuto's incomprehensible confidence for half a second, Colored Glaze said seriously, "Although this incident involves the lives of 3 people and the struggle of multiple forces, there is still only one core problem." "What?" "Your father, the head of the Rulon Group, Kiryu Ishima's safety." As Colored Glaze spoke, she unconsciously used her thumb and index finger to twirl a handful of soft hair that hung down to her side and rubbed it like a fireball. This was Colored Glaze's habit when she was deep in thought, which meant that her brain was now fully activated. Sensible asked, "Do you mean we have to protect the safety of Mr. Ishima in the prison?" "No, Nesting Duck Prison is always an area outside of our forces, and IAM has already let her people infiltrate. The last-minute protection measures won't work." "Then young mistress means break the prison and bring Mr. Ishima out. He is now trapped in the shallows. As long as he leaves the prison, it won't be so easy for IAM to do anything to him." "Prison break?" When he heard such exciting words, even Ryuto was a little scared. "God, this is Nesting Duck Prison?" "It is the most heavily guarded prison in Yoto and even the country. Because most of the prisoners in Nesting Duck Prison are felons, the fortifications inside are naturally tight to the point of making people's hair stand on end. But according to Colored Glaze's idea, they have to break into the prison in these 21 hours and take Ishima away?" Gao Yuan scratched his head and smiled bitterly. "This sounds like a very difficult job, and the time is too short." It wasn't that Gao Yuan didn't think of planning a prison break, but the problem was that there were only about 20 hours left before the Saito Club's anniversary celebration. What can they do with this little time? Unlike the situation in TV series or movies, it was extremely difficult to break into a modern prison and required a lot of preparation work. Just finding a way to get the prison map, figure out the deployment of the guards, prepare the necessary tools, formulate the escape route, and so on, it was not something that could be done in a day or 2. It was normal for a successful prison break to even plan for a few months. But now they had less than a day to prepare. It was simply too difficult. The SS level mission suddenly became SSS level. However, Colored Glaze shook her head and said, "Strictly speaking, we don't only have 21 hours. The limit should be more than 30 hours. Sensible couldn't help but ask, "How?" "We are responsible for the planning and action of the prison break. Ryuto can't participate because IAM will definitely watch his actions. If he participates in the prison break, he will be immediately seen through, but the task of delaying must be completed by him." "Well said. Then what am I going to do?" "You are prepared to go to the Tokyo Emperor Hotel tomorrow night to kidnap Dunya. Remember, you must be prepared to the extent that you can take her away." "What?" Hearing this, Ryuto couldn't help but be shocked. "What is this? In the end, I still have to kidnap Dunya? Is it still planning to give Dunya to IAM?" Colored Glaze also immediately explained, "Kidnapping Dunya doesn't mean that you have to give her to IAM. After you take Dunya away, pretend that you are being chased and then hide everywhere. In short, don't meet IAM's people no matter what." "Ah, I see. I understand. Pretending to kidnap Dunya to paralyze IAM, but in fact, it is to delay time." Suddenly, Sensible couldn't help but snap his fingers and understood Big Sister's intention. As long as Dunya was successfully kidnapped, then IAM's side would think that Ryuto was sincerely giving in and wouldn't make a move on Yima in the short term. Of course, as time slowly passed, IAM wouldn't be so stupid to be deceived. Sooner or later, she would find out that Ryuto wasn't hiding from the pursuers, but from the people sent by the Tianmu group. But before Yongheim realizes what's going on, I'll also ask my mother to send out a Kanzaki family team to distract her as much as possible so that we can delay this plan for as long as possible until we can rescue Yima-san. After explaining the process of the entire plan, Colored Glaze finally said, "Even so, this is a very urgent mission. We have to start now. Does anyone have any objections?" "No," Yunyen loudly replied, looking very motivated. "No, I promise to complete the mission." Sensible patted his chest and firmly and confidently replied, "No objections. Let's just hope that everything goes smoothly tomorrow." Although Gao Yuan sighed, his expression had also become extremely serious. In the end, as the core figure of this operation, Long Do nodded and said to this group of comrades who could entrust their lives to him, "From now on, I'll leave it to everyone. This time, we must let the Heavenly Eye group know how powerful we are. Let that be *starred woman know that we're not existences that can be trampled on at will." Just like that, following the end of the video conference in the tablet, the first direct collision between the Tongshang army and the Qianmu group was about to begin. Chapter 130. That night, after the video conference ended, everyone was divided into two groups and began to prepare for the next step. The first group was the Prison Break Team. The group consisted of Colored Glaze, Takahara Masato, Sensible Goro, and all the members of the Rulong Security Company. The members of this group would start preparing for the mission of breaking out of prison and rescuing Tong Shang Kazuma. Sensible Goro was in charge of using the internet and the police station's power to quickly search for the layout of the nesting duck prison, as well as other research work. Takahara Masato was in charge of mobilizing the members of the Rulong Security Company to carry out heavy physical work such as drilling the sewers and digging tunnels. Colored Glaze was giving instructions behind the scenes while preparing to contact her mother, Kaneshiro Rui, in an attempt to get her to send her family's combat power to harass the Tenmu group. As for the second group, it was the Kidnapping Team. The group consisted of Ryuto Kiryo, Yunyen Tsukimi, Narukai Otani, Kamida Momoyama, and the others. The members of this group would start preparing to infiltrate the Tokyo Emperor Hotel and kidnap Dunya tonight. Yunyen had already received an invitation and could freely enter the Tokyo Emperor Hotel tomorrow. It was naturally the most convenient for her to partner up with Ryuto to infiltrate and kidnap Dunya. The rest of the work would be carried out by Narukai Otani and Kamida Momoyama. These two were also Ryuto's most trusted aides in the Rulong group. It was a pity that Kawaki Nan was picking up soap in prison. Otherwise, there would be one more person to use. Since they only had 30 hours at most, everyone's tasks were quite heavy. It could be said that they were racing against time, especially Sensible and Takahara. They didn't even have time to sleep. Even so, no one complained about such heavy work. After all, everyone knew that this was a crucial battle against the Tenmu group, and it was the kind that involved many lives. Under such circumstances, Ryuto naturally did not rest. Instead, he spent the entire night preparing for the kidnapping and escape. Although everyone had a lot of work to do this time, the one who was truly in danger was Ryuto himself. He wanted to sneak into the Tokyo Imperial Hotel and kidnap the young lady in front of so many martial artists of the Saitu Guild. That was one thing. Moreover, after taking Dunya away, the two of them still had to run around Tokyo without being caught. This was actually the most dangerous thing. If he took Dunya away, Ryuto would be attacked from both sides by the Saitu Guild and the Heavenly Eye group. The former wanted to find Dunya and kill Ryuto. The latter wanted to take away Dunya and perhaps kill Ryuto as well. In other words, the kidnapping was only 30% of the mission's difficulty. The remaining 70% was in the process of stalling for time. After all, it was not easy to fool around for more than 10 hours. For this, Ryuto needed to make a lot of preparations. After arranging for Narukai and Kamida to rush to the Tokyo Emperor Hotel overnight, he first inquired about the nearby situation. Ryuto also asked advisor Fujiki to find him some of the best people and borrow some money from him. Looking at the list of items Ryuto handed over, Fujiki initially thought that the young master was going to fight with the army. After asking, he found out that it was related to the life and death of the team leader. Since it involves the boss, then these old bones of mine will naturally do my best. Don't worry, I'll prepare the things you want. Also, this is the maximum amount of money that the group can provide. Fujiki took the list and nodded. He then took out a few bags of money from the safe and stuffed them into Ryuto's hands. Because the Rulong Security Company had not started to make a profit, the Rulong Group was actually quite tight. Even so, they could still take out tens of millions. Therefore, after Ryuto arranged the preparations for tonight, he took the bags of money and returned to his room. This time, Mr. Fujiki had taken out more than 50 million in cash. In addition to the 30 million he had won from the Battle of the Dragons, as well as the money he had earned from killing monsters in the past few nights, he now had a huge sum of money in his hands. When he opened the status panel, he could see that Ryuto's current status was as follows. Name, Ryuto Kiryoage. 16 status. Intelligence LV2, Physique LV3, Courage LV3, Insight LV2, Charm LV3 Title. Combat Apprentice, obtained after defeating 500 enemies. Combat ability increased by 10% when equipped. Equipment. M9 pistol, excellent. Taser stun gun, excellent. Dragon tooth serrated knife, excellent. Tools. Rogue Velcro, Rogue analysis mirror, Rogue voice changing mask skills. Furamaki style martial arts, Iron Bone mastery, Copper skin mastery, Parkour master, Rogue immortality total assets. $94, 417, 800. The Combat Apprentice title that Ryuto was currently using was unexpectedly obtained after he went out to talk with someone every night. When wearing this title, it could directly increase combat ability, including speed, strength, endurance, resistance, and so on. Although a 10% increase did not seem like much, but considering Ryuto's current LV3 physique, professional master, level physical fitness, and a lot of active and passive buffs, this additional 10% was actually quite obvious. The most important thing was that Ryuto had a lot of money in his hands that he could use. To put it simply, this was the first time in his life that he, Ryuto Kiryo, had seen so much money. A total of 94 million. 94 million. Looking at the huge amount of numbers in his assets column, Ryuto could not help but do a strange dance. Money was a good thing. Especially for Ryuto, money was even better. After all, it represented attributes, skills, equipment, and life. Now that the super difficult mission was in front of him, Ryuto needed to plan carefully to see how he should spend the 90 million. 90 million yuan might seem like a lot, but it wasn't that much to be said. After all, it would cost a huge sum of 50 million just to upgrade Dragon's Battle's attributes. Not long ago, after being killed by Kaiser, the items and skill books in the shop were all refreshed. Ryuto also found that the price of the same type of skill books in the shop had increased by several times. For example, the Iron Bone Mastery previously only cost 1 million, but this time the second skill book had become 2 million, and the Parkour Master went from 3 million to 6 million, a full double. If he continued to buy, the third, fourth, and fifth skill books of the same type would become more and more expensive, and the amount of money needed to increase the proficiency level would also increase. Of course, compared to the skill books, Ryuto now needed to increase his attributes first, and now it was the most practical, physique, attribute. Chapter 131. Among the 5 attributes of intelligence, physique, courage, insight, and charm, the attribute that could be improved the most was naturally the physique attribute. Enhancing physique could directly increase speed, strength, endurance, resistance, flexibility, and other aspects of strength. Anything related to the body's attributes would have an obvious increase. When Ryuto first transmigrated to this world, he increased his physique from LV2 physique, excellent passerby, to LV3 physique, professional expert. Later on, it did indeed have a good effect. Therefore, before this big event of infiltration, kidnapping, fighting, and escaping began, Ryuto needed to increase his physique by another level. From LV3 physique to LV4 physique requires 50 million yuan. Confirm payment. After clicking on the plus symbol under physique for a long time, the familiar system voice sounded again. Thinking about it carefully, 50 million yuan to increase an attribute from professional expert to International Warrior was actually quite a good deal. It could even be said to be quite cheap. After all, as long as one practiced hard, most ordinary people could reach the physical fitness of professional expert. It was just a matter of whether one was willing to put in so much effort. But to go further to International Warrior, it was no longer a realm that could be reached by hard work. One must have both hard work and talent, otherwise there was no way. Just like in the professional boxing world, it was not difficult to cultivate an ordinary professional boxer with professional training, but a boxing champion could not be trained by professional training. It had to be a genius of 1 in 100. At this time, Ryuto had this opportunity to surpass talent and hard work. The price he paid was only 50 million yuan, which was a negligible price. He had to say that the system was really shameless. As the dragon head pressed the confirm payment button, a light flashed, and the bag of banknotes that had just been taken out from the safe suddenly disappeared like magic. But after that, Ryuto felt that his body suddenly changed, as if there was a qualitative leap from the inside to the outside. This feeling was different from the simple increase of strength or the feeling of making the body lighter. In an instant, he only felt that the control of his body was completely different from before. There was a feeling of his body moving at will and hitting wherever he pointed. Is this the physical ability of LV4 physique? Let's try it out. Suddenly, Ryuto looked at the courtyard outside the window not far away. His whole body flashed forward, and in the next second, he had already jumped over the windowsill and arrived in the courtyard. In the courtyard, there was a tall and beautiful tree that had been planted for many years. It was at least 20 meters tall with luxuriant branches and leaves. Long Do, on the other hand, quickly ran toward the tree and then jumped up. After jumping a distance of 8 to 9 meters, he grabbed the nearly 4-meter-tall branch with one hand and flipped his body again, standing firmly on the branch. Then, his figure twisted and turned on the tree, jumping up rapidly as if he was walking on flat ground. It only took him about 3 seconds to reach the top of the tree, which was more than 20 meters high. This series of dazzling movements, if seen from a third person's point of view, was simply like being possessed by Tarzan. It didn't even look like something a human could do. What was even more exaggerated was that when Ryuto reached the top of the tree, he actually floated to the side without hesitation. His figure fell more than 20 meters vertically in the dark night. When he landed, he spun a few times like a spinning top and stood firmly on the ground. His face was not red, he was not out of breath, and he did not have any adverse reactions. So that's how it is. This is a monster-level physical ability. After understanding how terrifying his current physical fitness was, Ryuto could not help but take a deep breath. Now, Ryuto finally realized that the LV4 physique, upgraded by the system, and the LV4 physique that normal people could achieve were actually of a different dimension. After all, the physique attribute was a very complicated concept, and it contained a lot of sub-attributes. For example, strength, speed, flexibility, jumping ability, explosiveness, endurance, flexibility, resistance, etc. If a professional athlete could reach the level of a world champion in the high jump, then he would have a LV4 physique International Warrior rating in the system. But such a world champion would only reach the level of an International Warrior in the jumping ability sub-attribute. He would not be able to reach the level of an expert in the other attributes. However, Long Do was different. He didn't reach the highest standard in one of his physical attributes. Instead, he reached the same standard in all of his physical attributes. This was equivalent to Ryuto having the destructive power of a boxing champion, the endurance of a marathon champion, the speed of a sprinting champion, the explosive power of a weightlifting champion, the jumping ability of a high jump champion, the flexibility of a gymnastics champion, etc. After combining so many extreme physical abilities, Ryuto's current physical ability could only be described as monstrous, because there should not be such an all-rounder in the world. The 50 million was well spent. Next, he would look at the item store and skill store to see if there were any good things to buy. After confirming that his physical ability had reached the level that could make James Bond cry, Ryuto returned to his room and opened the skill store to see if there were any items or skills that could be used at this time. Although he was rich enough to have 40 million left after buying one attribute, he could not spend all of it. He still had to save some money to buy jobs. Because it was difficult for Ryuto to have time to change to the Desperado title in the middle of a fierce battle, it was safer to calculate the cost of buying jobs as 1 million. Considering that this mission was dangerous and that he might die many times, Ryuto estimated that he would have to save at least 10 million to save his life, which was enough for him to revive 10 times. Of course, in addition to that, he also had to save some cash to buy specific items in an emergency. Otherwise, if he spent all the money in advance, it would be awkward if he ran out of money to buy items in an emergency. So after spending more than an hour choosing, Ryuto decided to buy 1 active skill, 6 passive skills, and 2 items that would definitely be useful. The first active skill that he chose to buy was a highly lethal martial art called Ancient 8 Extremities Fist. Chapter 132. For the current Ryuto, although his physical fitness was strong enough, fighting with others didn't only depend on physical strength, but also the degree of mastery of martial arts. Before this, the only martial art that Ryuto had learned was the Furamaki-style martial arts. But this martial art was all about counterattacking, and there were no active attacks. Therefore, if there were no tables, chairs, or benches in the surroundings that could activate the hooligan does not die by bare hands skill, then Ryuto could only randomly fight, and use random punches to try and kill the old master. This kind of unstructured and flat a style could be used to bully ordinary small fries, but if he really met an expert, it would be a bit troublesome, and he still had to learn a martial art that could be used. In fact, there were many similar martial arts in the skill store, such as Mixed Yuan Xing Yi Tai Chi, Pine Bone Bouncing Lightning Whip, Ma's Take Hair, and so on, but they didn't look very reliable. Therefore, Ryuto chose for a long time, and finally chose this ancient Bajiquan. Bajiquan, the name of the ancient boxing technique, Bajiquan, meant that the force could reach extremely far in all directions, and its movements were simple, firm and fierce, and majestic. Simply put, this martial arts movements were not fancy, but were very practical, and it could defeat people in one hit. Moreover, the Bajiquan in Ryuto's hands wasn't the modern version passed down, but the complete version from the peak of ancient times, and its complexity and practicality couldn't be compared to the modern version. This kind of straightforward, firm and fierce martial art, combined with Ryuto's tyrannical physical fitness, could completely kill small fries one by one, and kill a group of them. In addition to this martial arts skill that could be used actively, Ryuto also bought 3 new passive skills, namely, Silent Movement, Aura Shield, and Omnipotent Driver. As the name implied, the effects of these 3 passive skills were very simple and crude. The first was to reduce the sound made when moving, and the second was to reduce the aura exposed. Since the mission this time might involve infiltration, these 2 skills were very suitable for infiltration. Naturally, they were necessities. The Omnipotent Driver, on the other hand, could automatically learn to drive all kinds of vehicles, from wheelbarrows, bicycles, motorcycles, cars, and even airplanes. As one's proficiency increased, one could even play many unexpected tricks. The reason why Ryuto bought this passive skill was because he considered the possibility that he might need to use a vehicle to escape with Dunya. However, he didn't even know how to drive a car, so it was better to learn a driving skill to sharpen his gun. As for the last 3 passive skills he bought, they were the newly bought Iron Bone Mastery, Copper Skin Mastery, and Parkour Master. Due to the fact that he had purchased the skill book once before, the new skill book allowed the 3 passive skills of Dragon Battle to reach 40% proficiency. The effects were much stronger than before, but of course, the price had also doubled. Copper Skin, Iron Bones, and Parkour were all versatile skills. They could be used in any situation, and they weren't expensive. Therefore, as long as these 3 skill books were refreshed in the shop, Ryuto didn't even need to think about it. He just bought them directly. They would definitely be useful. After buying 7 skill books in the skill shop, Ryuto's skill bar became a lot fuller. Of course, his wallet also became a lot thinner. The cost of these 7 skill books added up to $22 million. Including the $50 million he had spent previously, Ryuto's total assets were only a little more than $20 million. After thinking for a while, Ryuto finally bought 2 items. They were the Rogue Hang Glider and the Rogue First Aid Pill. The Rogue Hang Glider cost $3 million. When falling from a high place, it could glide. Simply put, it was the artifact that the monster thief kid often carried in the sky to show off. The Rogue First Aid Pill cost $5 million. It could treat most injuries. As long as one didn't die on the spot, eating it would save one's life. These two items were very expensive. Of course, their effects were very practical. They were good items that could be used in an emergency. After that, Ryuto didn't continue to buy items. After all, he only had $14 million left in his treasury, $10 million of which was reserved for living expenses. The remaining $4 million was used for emergency purchases. After spending almost all the money he had, Ryuto finally let out a sigh of relief. He took the time to lie down and rest for a while. At this time, the night was coming to an end. There was even a light in the distant horizon, indicating that the morning of the second day was coming. After resting for a few hours, Ryuto was woken up by Advisor Fujiki, who rushed over. "This is the equipment you wanted. I've done my best to find it." Advisor Fujiki looked like he hadn't slept the whole night. There were large dark circles around his eyes. However, he still forced himself to put the backpack he was carrying in front of the young master. Inside the backpack was the special equipment that Ryuto had asked him to prepare for him in the early hours of the morning. Almost all of them were professional goods that ordinary people wouldn't normally see. Among them was a special brass knuckle that looked like a ring on one's finger. When turned, it could pop out a broken window. When wearing this thing, ordinary people could break high-strength glass with one punch. With Ryuto's strength, even bulletproof glass might not be able to withstand it. In addition to the special brass knuckle, Fujiki also gave him an Uzi submachine gun that could be used with one hand, a thin, carbon fiber bulletproof vest, a set of hooks with ropes to help with climbing, a small tube of mixed knockout powder, and 3 flash bombs. It had to be said that Advisor Fujiki's years in this industry weren't for nothing. These overly professional items might not even be able to be bought with money. They also required a strong network of connections. For Ryuto, these special equipment would undoubtedly be of great help to him. In tonight's operation, Ryuto could directly wear most of the equipment on his body. For example, the special brass knuckle, the bulletproof vest, the small tube of knockout powder, and he could directly put them in his pocket. As for the conspicuous Uzi submachine gun, the flash bombs, and the large hooks with ropes, they could be thrown into the equipment slot and could be used at any time. At this time, Ryuto's preparation work was completed. He was ready to sneak into the Tokyo Emperor Hotel at any time. First, it was the attributes, then the skills, then the items, and finally the equipment. After this solid preparation, Ryuto could be said to be armed to the teeth. When Ryuto finally left the Rulong Group headquarters and rushed towards the Rulong Security Company, his character attributes had become like this: name, Ryuto Kiryoage, 16 attributes, Wisdom LV2, Constitution LV4, Courage LV3, Insight LV2, Charm LV3 title, Beginner Assassin, obtained after 100 successful sneak attacks. Presence reduced by 20% when equipped, equipment. Uzi submachine gun, rare, flash bombs, rare, hooks with ropes, excellent, accompanying equipment. Carbon fiber bulletproof vest, special brass knuckle, mixed knockout powder tools, rogue velcro, rogue analytical lens, rogue voice changing mask, rogue hang glider, rogue first aid pill skills, ancient 8 extremities fist, Furamaki style martial arts, iron bone mastery, copper skin mastery, parkour master, rogue immortality to bare hands, silent, movement, aura shielding technique, omnipotent driver total assets, $15. 417,800. There was only one word to describe his current attributes: ferocious. It could be said that in Ryuto's life, this was the first time he was so ferocious. He even felt that he was so ferocious that he could directly kill Tenmu Ayam in the unrestrained Sky Tower. Of course, that was temporarily impossible, but completing this mission should not be a problem. Chapter 133. When Ryuto arrived at the Rulong Security Company, it was already close to noon. The entire floor that was originally bustling was particularly deserted today, as if the entire security company had gone out to perform a mission. For ordinary security companies, going out to perform tasks was a normal thing, but this group of members did not go out to perform ordinary tasks today. Instead, they collectively dug a tunnel. After searching and sorting through the night this morning, Sensible finally obtained the internal map and guard layout of the entire nesting duck prison through various means. In this case, Gao Yuan quickly led the team quietly to a sewer near the nesting duck prison, intending to dig a tunnel into the prison from the sewer. Although there were a lot of professional digging tools, according to Gao Yuan's estimation, it would take about 20 hours to dig this tunnel. And now, there were only about 8 hours left before the Saito Club anniversary celebration. In other words, Ryuto had to delay at least 12 hours after kidnapping Dunya to delay the completion of the tunnel, and he had to spare some time to take Ichiro away. 12 hours, huh? That sounds like a lot of work. Why don't we give Dunya a heads up first? Soon after, Ryuto sat in the director's office of the Rulong Security Company, discussing the specific details of today's plan with Yun Yen through video chat. The latter asked worriedly. Yun Yen had always felt very conflicted about the fact that the two were about to set off to kidnap Dunya. After all, Dunya was her friend. We still can't judge what Dunya's attitude will be. If she can't help but leak a word to others, then everything will be over. After hearing Yun Yen's words, Ryuto shook his head seriously. Although Dunya was one of the members of his harem, unlike Colored Glaze and Yun Yen, Ryuto had not yet gained Dunya's trust. If he rashly went to Dunya and told her that he was going to kidnap her tonight, Dunya would definitely react in an unpredictable manner. If things went badly, he would be courting death. Therefore, although he felt sorry for the young lady, Ryuto decided to use the mixture of drugs obtained from consultant Fujiki to make her faint. For Dunya, she didn't need to do anything tonight. In short, she just needed to have a good night's sleep. When she woke up the next day, everything should be over. This was obviously the best result for everyone. After deciding how to treat Dunya, Ryuto discussed the specific details of sneaking into the venue with Yun Yen. From the information obtained now, it was quite difficult to sneak into the Tokyo Regal Hotel. After all, a large number of dignitaries would gather in the entire hotel tonight. The surrounding security strength could be said to be unprecedentedly high. Even an ant would find it difficult to sneak in. First of all the other passageways of the hotel were completely blocked. Only the front door was left for guests to use. The hotel staff had been on standby inside the hotel 5 days ago. They were not allowed to contact the outside world at all. At the same time, there were hundreds of cameras, helicopters, and drones around the hotel from all angles without any blind spots to observe the situation outside. Whether it was climbing over the wall, airdropping, or digging a hole, it was impossible to sneak in without being discovered. Therefore, from a certain point of view, the only way to enter the hotel that night was through the front door. To enter from the front door, the first thing that must be shown was a special invitation letter. There was an electronic chip that couldn't be forged in a short period of time. In addition to the guards at the front door, a perfect face recognition system and metal detector were also installed. Not to mention the densely packed surveillance inside the hotel, not to mention the thousands of elite bodyguards and the martial artist bodyguards of the Saito Club, just the process of entering the door was enough to give people a headache. When they discussed this, Ryuto asked, "If I disguise myself as Yun Yen's bodyguard, can I sneak in with you?" "I don't think so, because the invitation letter states that only the holder is allowed to enter. Even the bodyguards have to wait outside." I can't snatch other people's invitations. I can't pass the face recognition test. It's too late to make a mask. Headache." Suddenly, Ryuto couldn't help but shake his head. He seemed to be thinking hard about a way to sneak in. As if she couldn't bear to see Long Do having a headache, Yun Yen carefully said, Actually, I have a way to help you sneak in, but it's a bit strange." When he heard Yun Yen's words, Ryuto immediately raised his head and asked in a joyful tone, "What is the way? As long as I can get in, the rest doesn't matter." "Actually, I have a set of Rococo-style vintage palace dress. Although I didn't plan to wear it tonight, I should be able to bring you in with that dress." When talking about this, Yunyan's face blushed. She seemed to be a little embarrassed about what she was going to say next. Ryuto was confused when he heard the words. He asked in confusion, "Palace dress? How can you bring me in with that thing? That kind of palace dress is very big and wide. There is a huge skirt support inside that can stretch the skirt to more than 1 meter in width. It is quite gorgeous, like a huge flower. Hey, could it be?" Seeing that Ryuto seemed to think of how to use this dress to sneak into the venue, Yunyan also explained shyly, "At that time, you can try to hide in my dress. As long as you don't walk fast, you shouldn't be discovered." What? Hide in Yunyan's dress? In an instant, Ryuto thought of the shocking scene in his mind, and he almost spurted blood on the computer screen. Senior sister Yunyan's height was considered to be quite tall among females. If she wore a huge dress, it was indeed possible to hide a person under the dress. However, if it was hidden under her skirt, it meant that Long Do would have extremely intimate physical contact with Yunyan, and it would not be ordinary physical contact. When he thought of Yunyan's straight, slender, and well-proportioned legs, and the dreamy cloth that might float around his head, Ryuto had a feeling of blood surging up. But now is not the time to think about these messy things. Ryuto swallowed a mouthful of saliva and quickly said, No, this is too unfair to you. You will definitely feel very uncomfortable." "I will definitely feel a little uncomfortable, but compared to this, it is more important to help you enter the venue." Even if she is very shy, Yunyan still said firmly. After all, in her view, this small matter is not worth mentioning compared to the overall situation. "Yunyan, you are really a perfect girlfriend, as long as you don't cook." In this way, under Yunyan's insistence, Ryuto had to agree to this plan. How to say, although hiding in Yunyan's dress is not manly, it is a disguised humiliation, but now Ryuto really does not care about manliness. It is more important to smoothly enter the hotel. Thus, Long Do was definitely not trying to sneak under senior sister Yunyan's skirt to find out what was going on. Definitely not. Probably not. When making the final preparations in the afternoon, the dragon head repeatedly reminded himself like this, although he may not even believe it himself. But in any case, as time passed by, this Saito anniversary celebration, that is bound to cause a big commotion, finally slowly began. Ryuto's Mission Impossible mission will also begin tonight. Chapter 134. The large width of the skirt in the head, that in and out of the carriage ready to meet one, when the sedan entered to help her, she was already fighting the dragon. In front of the carriage Yen Yun was in reality. The fighting dragon of the bag head is, fighting the dragon is. As soon as his head was out of the bag, he suddenly noticed that the carriage behind him was about to open a shop. The king of wine, Emperor Jingdong, was about to meet the moon in the courtyard. The sedan was about to pass. After a good rest, Big Sister Nang defecated in the small room. She placed the quilt and the seat behind the table, and at the same time, the partition layer fell down, the seat behind the seat and in front of the seat was steamed. She pressed the button and pressed the trigger. Sister is big, good. The next breath, "Don't think I started to open the ceremony in front, Uncle Chuan Pin. Order the machine driver and bodyguard in front of the sedan Yen Yun," when the carriage sat on the seat. She was waiting for the arrival of the carriage at the entrance of the parking gate. She went out of the palace to wait for the attendants home. She slowly followed behind Yen Yun. Her heels were high. Her white Athens shoes were worn on the top. She wore them on the bottom. Come out to invite the general talent is not also this, the high bundling of the general is a second, wear only clothes, this Yen Yun is the reason. The troublesome little thing is also wearing the words, but the woman is less than, look at, although the upper body is wearing clothes bright, this pass not only. Point to the extreme beauty of the straight and simple hair, show soft fluffy clouds like still, over the care of the heart that the match, the 10 senses of the body stand up to see, make the skirt lining rise and edge leaf lotus, fold, beautiful like a flower blooming like still swaying, the skirt big and big fluttering lightly go up to look at the square below. What's too much is too much, but it's also too beautiful. It's very useful to set off each other's floral prints, buckles, satin, and edged silk. It's very beautiful, inlaid, and combined. It's made of 3 inverted shapes and angles. Silk is used to cover the front of the bosom. Satin is white and blue. It's used to sew the bottom of a skirt. The top boundary of the quasi-water level is expected to use and plan. The Penhan family name is more to accept the gift of this dress sister learning Yen Yun. Gorgeous and complicated, noble and magnificent, colorful and splendid are also planned to adorn clothes. The weave of the wind is intercourse, love and extravagance, pleasure and enjoyment when the reflection is reflected. The national law of Gu Feng art type 1 was born at the beginning of the epoch of the 80th century is Feng Koluo. The coming and going of Tianqin Fan, the painting of oil classics from ancient times, is as stunning as ever. The beauty of the back skirt ceremony, the style of the palace, the style of Coco Lo, is magnificent and magnificent. Wearing it on top and pretending to be an expert in the art of the passage, the brightness and fluttering is appropriate to each other, comes from the original Yen Yun. Just for the sake of envying her, she couldn't bear to be styled as a teacher. She would be responsible for the styling. Later on, her face and makeup would be suitable for the painting and painting. She would be properly dressed and dressed like a big sister or a little girl. You're a fan of Gu Zigong. You're very good at fixing things. You're so beautiful, but you're so young and beautiful. Ready to go out of the door to do a good job. Also see the moon in the wild goose clouds. In the see the moon in the courtyard, district people rich piece of a different position, at the same time at the battlefield to receive the ready members of the staff to work on the side of this wine shop of the imperial Jingdong. The sharpness of the teacher's essence of righteousness and righteousness is indeed visible. The vigilance of the fourth prince's gaze is also the same, falling nimbly on the feet. The order has, but the well has come to do the work, not saying a word, the expression on the face of the person has. The position of the post has come to return from the work of the various members of the staff to work on the wine shop of the imperial Jingdong. The order has been given, who can enter? The opportunity can be taken advantage of by one enemy to Su Yun, not against absolute. Attention is focused on absolute protection, attention is concentrated in the middle, beginning to want to go to the small one to celebrate, go to the position of the post to work from each return, very good. The battle of the soldiers was about to start, and the group was the same as before. The heat of the breath was released and the body was muddled. The bone spurs of the killing intent appeared and the voice of the middle-aged man was about to fall. The voice of the voice was about to fall. Kill, 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 drink. Peeing in his pants and fought to frighten the people of the imperial Jingdong Tang Zai to listen to the younger generation he let. The strongest in the manual group martial arts competition was at the top of the world. This pair of dared to regret their decision. He let them go. Bones of backbone, break him. Cowardly dogs, he will crush this opportunity to return it to us. Can it not be, but... Dao Hui and Dao Hui spoke in unison. Just as the members of the Dao Hui were about to start their work, they suddenly paused. Can you? This Su Yuning us, bad Su Yuning us, bad Su Yuning us, bad Su Yuning Dian Qing Si, this pair is extremely useful, not without a plan to try, in the midst of being stupid, we secretly think that we can recognize ourselves as him. Opportunistic times are difficult to come by. One is to speak of the generation's small group of people, Dian Qing Si this pair. Claws danced and teeth bared, crawling out like a claw, as if Judas had fallen into a corner. Each from the association is the total. The clean work is very difficult to sort out the small rascals hiding in the dark, but there are only a few. The number of the enemy is not enough to eliminate. The number of the enemy is not enough to provoke us. I came to establish the Guan Association at the age of 300 years old. Teng Zai is here. The beginning of the battle is the beginning of the battle. The Tao is replenishing and continuing, and the answer is enough. Look under the face of the person who is able to point out whether or not it is obvious. Ask him the question. The comparison is clear and fresh, the shape of the short body of the five, and the strength of the thick voice of the mute sand belt slightly. The person in the middle ear has entered the transmission ground clear, but the sound of the voice enters, but the sound of the instrument amplifies the similar wind of the ku mai he uses the person who has not ran. What is the taste of this Tao? Zhou Baisan established the Guan Association at the age of 300 years old. Tengzai is here to celebrate the evening of Jianqing Si. He opened his mouth and slowly closed it. He glanced at a member of the security team, who was standing on the stage, and swept his gaze over the security chief, Jianqing Nian Cho Tengzai, who was standing on the stage. Because of the original reason, fear, respect, and strength, he is absolutely talented in the number of people, cold and ruthless in the hands of the Tao into Tengzai. The luck of the world is not as good as the strength of the real strength. He cannot compare. This place's Fan Bu has always arrived to the point. The Guan Association at the Cloud Green School will be in step by step, the fear and determination of the Tao into Tengzai. The martial arts are not suitable for it. It is said that the reason is according to the shape of the body. The dwarf has to be more than a child. There is only one of 4 meters tall, behind the adult. The illness of the dwarf, the illness of the disease will give birth to the family Tengzai of the straight line. The Tao into Tengzai's child demon is called a person. Fan Bu's Guan Association Tengzai is the position of this person on the stage to give a speech in the station. The loyalty certificate of the Sun divided loyalty to the death is enough to be able to absolutely choose, carefully select the elite of the various countries to follow and return some people. The People's Guan Association Tengzai has been replaced by the members of the staff working in the branch of the large Wine King Emperor Jingdong, between this and this. The number of scholars who specialize in the absolute category of masters and cooks is extremely small. The shop elite come out of the selection of the Guan Association Tengzai of the various countries to follow. The members of the staff come to the wine room of this shop. This is not and also we on the actual fact. The imposing manner of the martial arts of the special people is there. There is only a single person standing in the room. The sturdy body, the sharp divine eyes are all a few of them. The members of the staff who do not work together with the entire staff of the department, such as the cleaners, the leaders, the staff guests, the staff service, and the staff leader, are all gathered in this and go to see the fine people. In front of Xiang Wangguang Wei Jingman, who was a member of the Duqing staff, who had 100 names, he went up on stage to speak to a short man in a western suit, who was dressed in black. The person who suffers from the illness of the Confucian scholar is like, many of the short people want to be compared to the limbs of the 4 people, the face of the iron face half blocked to take him. The short people of the men look up from 10 to 1, the construction of the stage to give a speech in the hall in the big station. When the march and the main members of the movement of the face of the unfamiliar opening field, the hall in the building of the Wine King Emperor Jingdong, in the heart of the bustling Huafan Jingdong. Right left point 5, the sky under noon. Chapter 135. Well done, Yun Yen. After peeking his head out, Ryuto gave a thumbs up to Yun Yen, but he still didn't dare to breathe loudly. Yun Yen's personal bodyguard, Uncle Shinagawa, was also an expert in this field. It was impossible to hide from him by hiding in the back seat of the car. But fortunately, Ryuto now had the passive skill aura concealment technique, which could reduce his aura to the lowest level. If he didn't speak or move, even a professional bodyguard would have a hard time discovering his existence. In this way, Uncle Shinagawa drove in the front, while Yun Yen and Ryuto communicated with each other through the phone. In order to ease the tension of the upcoming mission, the two chatted as much as possible in their normal state and talked about some very daily content. Yun Yen, you're dressed so beautifully today. #carrot. Carrot hashtag. Don't say that, I'll be shy. When we arrive at the venue, there must be a lot of rich young masters coming to talk to you. Basically, every time I participate in this kind of occasion, it's annoying just thinking about it, like a swarm of flies. Doesn't this prove that Yun Yen, your charm is unparalleled in the world? If possible, I don't want such unparalleled charm, I just want the person I like to keep looking at me. Asterisk. Sob. Yun Yen is so cute, you're my angel. After seeing the reply in the phone, Ryuto was almost moved to tears. But at this moment, Ryuto turned his head and saw Yun Yen's feet in white high heels. The loose dress she was wearing was straight on the ground, so her shoes and feet couldn't be seen. But because Yun Yen sat down and lifted her dress a little, the part that was not exposed to the outside was in front of Ryuto's eyes. Her moderately sized lotus feet were very delicate, and the shape of her ankles and insteps were extremely beautiful. Coupled with the white stockings and high heels, they looked like they were made by heaven, making people want to hold them in their hands and carefully play with them. Gulp. Although Ryuto didn't have any foot fetishes, he couldn't help but swallow a mouthful of saliva when he saw this pair of beautiful feet. Ryuto couldn't help but blush when he thought about how he would have to crawl into that huge skirt and move together with the pair of slender legs wrapped in long stockings. His hands that were originally typing also stopped. Yunyen didn't think too much about this situation. She thought that Ryuto was concentrating on adjusting his condition, but she didn't expect that this guy was actually in heat with her feet. Not long after, as the car continued to move forward, it had also arrived near the parking lot of the Tokyo Emperor Hotel. But before the car stopped, there were already many eyes staring at them. The black-clothed bodyguard standing outside the hotel watched the car while speaking into the walkie-talkie. "This is Team B, the representative vehicle of Tsukumi Enterprise has come from the south, get ready to welcome them." A small drone flying next to the car quickly came to the side of the car and scanned the people inside from front to back before hurriedly flying away. Wow! What a strict security level! Before arriving at the entrance of the hotel, Yunyen had already felt the almost suffocating atmosphere. With the Tokyo Emperor Hotel as the core, the surrounding hundreds of meters were almost set up as a restricted area, and it was really difficult for an ant to sneak in. However, just before the car slowed down, Yunyen gently knocked on the seat twice, and at the same time, she used her hands to lift her skirt up as much as possible. "It's finally here. Let's go." When Yunyen lifted the skirt, Ryuto also cooperated very well and got into her skirt. At the same time, the car stopped at the spacious parking lot at the entrance, and 7 or 8 bodyguards immediately surrounded it and began to check the car from all angles for abnormalities. "Miss, please be careful." After opening the door for Miss, Uncle Shinagawa reached out to help Yunyen walk down slowly and stepped on the red carpet that was laid out almost a kilometer outside. "I'm fine." After Yunyen nodded, she walked toward the main entrance not far away under the protection of the bodyguards, and Shinagawa was taken to another venue. Because she was wearing a beautiful and cumbersome dress, and there was a person hiding in the dress, Yunyen walked very slowly and looked particularly elegant. From the perspective of an outsider, because the dress was completely on the ground, it was completely impossible to see that someone was hiding inside. And Ryuto, who was hiding inside, also moved forward with Yunyen's steps in a strange posture. Although the space in the dress was not small, it was definitely not big enough for people to move around casually. In this case, Ryuto could only squat slightly and tiptoe forward slowly, for fear of being slower or faster. With Ryuto's current physical ability, it was not difficult for him to move with Yunyen. What really made him feel extremely tormented was the top scenic spot inside the dress. The inside of this dress was a private boudoir garden. Now Ryuto didn't even need to look around, he could see the pair of slender legs swaying left and right in front of his eyes. Because she was wearing white stockings, when Ryuto occasionally touched the leg, he could feel a smooth, cold, and soft touch. How to describe that feeling? It was a different flavor compared to direct contact with the skin. The girl's slender and well-proportioned legs exuded the vitality of youth, like a beacon to the sea of stars. Coupled with the stockings, it gave people a feeling of seduction. In particular, senior sister Yunyen's white stockings only reached the base of her thighs. The edge of the stockings had slightly sunk into the soft, white, and soft flesh of her thighs. This kind of strangle mark could be said to be a killer for thigh lovers. Of course, in this top scenic spot, other than the thighs, calves, lotus feet, stockings, and high heels, there was also a seemingly expensive white silk fattoo and a mysterious inverted triangle area. Yunyen's fattoo was undoubtedly expensive. Although he didn't know what brand it was, from the angle of the fattoo's graceful triangle area and the curve of the edges, it indeed showed the designer's extraordinary concept and pursuit. Apui! What am I thinking, bastard? As he walked, Ryuto started staring at Yunyen's fattoo, his face almost stuck to the smooth and soft stockings. Is this the time to do this? How can I? Beep beep. Beep beep. Beep beep. Just as Ryuto shook his head, trying to force himself to wake up from the temptation of this top scenic spot, A strange sound suddenly came from outside, and Yunyan's footsteps also stopped. "Miss, please wait a moment. Something on you is making a sound." At this time, Yunyan was passing through the checkpoint at the gate, and after hearing the sound, the two bodyguards immediately ran over. Chapter 136. Sure enough, it's here. This thing still can't be hidden. Just after Yunyan entered the door and caused the metal detector next to her to sound, Yunyan and Ryuto frowned at the same time. There were various detection devices installed at the entrance of the hotel, such as X-ray detectors, infrared scanners, and so on. However, Yunyan had asked someone to sew a circle of reflective fabric on the inside of her skirt in advance. From the results of the scan, it was impossible to see that there was a person hiding inside. Most of the props that could cause the metal detector alarm, Ryuto had also put them in the equipment bar in advance. All the things he carried were non-metal products. However, there was a small exception, and that was the ring-shaped window breaker worn on his finger. This small window breaker looked like a ring on the surface, but as long as it was twisted, a broken window tip could pop out. It could also be used as a brass knuckle in a fight. It was a very useful small prop. Ryuto still couldn't bear to let go of this prop after thinking about it, so he gave it to Yunyan and let her wear it on her finger. After all, Yunyan was a girl. It was normal for her to wear a ring on her finger. The bodyguards at the door shouldn't make a fuss. So when the bodyguards came over to check, Yunyan stretched out her hand with the ring and asked with a smile, "It should be caused by this ring, right? Can't I bring this in?" LV5 Charm. Activate. Just when Yunyan smiled, the two young bodyguards who came over to check seemed to have been hammered in the chest by a sledgehammer 80 times. Their whole state changed. They straightened their backs and bowed to Yunyan with a solemn expression. Then, they said apologetically, "Since it's a ring worn by the eldest miss, there's naturally no problem. Please come in." If it was an ordinary guest, these two bodyguards would definitely go over and check what was on the ring. Maybe they would even find a special mechanism inside. But the problem was that the person wearing this thing was Yunyan from the Moon Garden. She was a top-notch witch with demonic charm. Now that Yunyan was wearing this classic dress, her charm had been brought out to the extreme, so much so that the bodyguards around her were secretly staring at her. Of course, even if everyone was staring at Yunyan, they didn't dare to have a trace of wretchedness in their eyes. They all had a solemn expression as if they were looking at the goddess. It felt like if Yunyan raised her arm now, they would immediately turn their heads and follow Yunyan to beat up the original employer. The charm of the extreme Superman level was so terrifying. Just like that, under the watchful eyes of the bodyguards, Yunyan gracefully walked into the venue with small steps and passed the first hurdle unscathed. However, if this group of bodyguards who treated Yunyan as a goddess knew that there was a man hiding under the skirt of the goddess, these guys might line up to jump off a building on the spot. After entering the door, what appeared in front of Yunyan was a magnificently decorated lobby. An elegant female guide immediately walked over and led Yunyan to the banquet hall inside the hotel. Phew! I finally broke through the first line of defense. The next step is to release Ryuto. So Yunyan walked and suddenly said to the guide, "Sorry, I want to go to the bathroom." "Ah, the bathroom is here, I'll take you there." Hearing Yunyan's words, the guide immediately led Yunyan to an inconspicuous corridor. After a few turns, they came to a clean and elegant toilet. "Miss, do you need any help?" "There's no need for that. Just wait outside." After refusing the guide's offer to help, Yunyan came to the innermost cubicle of the toilet and locked the door. Only then did she finally breathe a sigh of relief. "Thank you for your hard work, Yunyan." Suddenly, Ryuto also got out from under Yunyan's skirt awkwardly and showed her an apologetic expression. Although Ryuto took a lot of advantage during the movement just now, for Yunyan, her situation was still quite awkward. Now although the two were in a relationship, they didn't even hold hands, let alone other intimate contact, so Yunyan's embarrassment could be imagined. But even so, Yunyan still said seriously, "Now is not the time to talk about this. In short, the direction of the top floor is not so easy to go. You have to be more careful. But I still have 1 hour and 50 minutes here. There is quite a lot of time. Ryuto looked at the cheap plastic watch on his wrist. The time on the watch was 6:10. According to the schedule of this Sai-2 Clubhouse anniversary celebration, 6 to 7 o'clock was the welcome and chat time. Dinner began at 7:15 in the banquet hall on the 20th floor. At 8 o'clock, as the host of the Sai-2 Clubhouse, the president of the headquarters, Sai-2 Takahiro, would come on stage to give a speech on behalf of the Sai-2 family. After that, it was time for the martial artists of the clubhouse to perform. Finally, it was the curtain call for the Sai-2 family to celebrate the 300th anniversary. How should he put it? Today's celebration seemed ancient and boring, but most of the people who came to this celebration weren't here for fun. Of course, whether this celebration was interesting or not had nothing to do with Ryuto, because he didn't intend to join it at all. His goal from the beginning to the end was only Sai-2 Dunya. According to the first-hand information that Yun Yen inquired from Dunya today, Dunya would not attend the dinner tonight. She would only show her face in the final, collective appearance. The purpose of this was to better protect Dunya, but in fact, it was because the other members of the Sai-2 family didn't want her to appear too much in public. After all, Dunya was a complete heresy for most of the members of the Sai-2 family. In the eyes of many people, such a silver-haired Russian girl was simply unworthy of representing the oldest martial arts family in Tokyo. If it weren't for the fact that Dunya's father, Wu Hong, was the appointed head of the family in the previous generation, and his own strength was excellent, they would have already kicked Dunya out of the family. Therefore, the people of the Sai-2 family didn't like Dunya, and Dunya didn't like them even more. This also led her to prefer to stay in the small garden on the top of the 50th floor to pass the time, rather than accompany her family to receive guests. Ryuto was naturally clear about the grievances between Dunya and the Sai-2 clubhouse. It was just that he didn't think that such grievances would create an excellent opportunity for his kidnapping plan. The best time to take Dunya away was around 8 o'clock. Most people's attention was focused on the president's speech. Ryuto needed to come to the 50th floor before that. "I'm ready, let's go." "Yes, this way please." Soon after, Yun Yen left the toilet alone and walked toward the banquet hall under the guidance of the guide. Long Do, on the other hand, put on a waiter's hat, tidied up the waiter's uniform, and sneaked out of the bathroom. He planned to follow the route he had planned to take to the elevator shaft. Chapter 137. The test chapter will be read in the morning. He was afraid that Ka had a lot of centers. He was in front of Horue to see Ku. Shang Shue's head was big. He was in charge of the main class. Seeing Ku, Shang Shue wanted to go up and take a look. His body was moving up and down, but in front of him, Horue was acting like a god in the rough boss position. It was true that Zhu Zhuang's children were born with a bear's hair, and Si Luo had to run to his clan's house to carry him out. Moreover, he was rough when the wind was doing things. The man's discipline was small and restrained. Rough 3 Big 5 was Hongwu Tengzai. The Taoist said with a bitter smile. Horue arrived in front of him in a hurry. He brought along the great martial arts. At that time, the great Mother Yu arrived to see each other for 1 li. This time, the great Mother Yu arrived to be surprised and frightened by the dragon. How come Li Lu is still the same? How come Li Lu said to Hui Rue that the temperament of a woman who came out of the honey can almost mature into a stalk? Li Lu said to Hui Rue. She was surprised, shocked, and moved to let the lord of the contemporary divine position realize that it was still possible. Her play was in comparison, but Hui Rue saw the first battle of the dragons. Forget the end of the body. Engraved deep like the seal of a person. The feeling of beauty was one outside. The other was Hui Rue's present. The appearance of the mortal made the sky seem like the goose cloud before. Like the wind of 10,000 emotions, the graceful figure swaying up and down, looking at the shadow of Hui Rue rang, the slow and elegant steps in front of her, her thick black hair coiled up high, the hairpin glazed Lu Rue, with her head that perfectly matched the appearance of a mature woman. Faintly, A touch of nobility and splendor was added to it. Threaded gold inlaid sleeves and collar were the same. Liveliness and splendor were not excessive. Her chi was big and steady. Her clothes and sleeves were left with black, Wan Kuei Yi Shuang. The one family's deity had a seal. The woman's beautiful head was out of 13. First, she did not pass this feeling. How could she say that there was no but? She was not over the years. She was related to the birth of Wang Zhai. Because of this, her mother's Li Lu was even though Hui Rui. She pretended to be a good fighter. Once she passed, she also showed Hui Rui as a substitute god. Because of this, she was related to the celebration. As soon as the spear came out of the bag, the brain fell into its own trap. Thinking of not being able to bear it, he directly attacked Jian Duolong. In a flash, he came and went, and walked, and my Huerue, who was acting as the substitute god of the clan, was acting as the substitute god of the clan. Mother's mother-in-law was really returned. Mother's mother-in-law, was she wrong? When he kills Polly, he poisons Polly to give his mother his Polly. Is this even more true? When the mother's mother-in-law's house is at home, the guests are waiting to receive them. Once the words are out of order and out of order, the guests are already waiting for the entrance to pull the main road to the east, and the criminals are tied up one by one in a grand hall. Just as he was about to vomit, he realized that he was fighting a dragon. As he walked through the door, he saw that the entrance to the hall was not far away. To the dark and gloomy appearance of the trough, the center is on one side, walking along one side a dragon. It's true, isn't it? Isn't it true that love dramas come and go? It's said that there are 3 consecutive failures in the small streets. What a coincidence. Once we get the chance, we'll look for him again and wait for him to hire a guest. We'll help him to the best of our ability. What can we do? The guests are waiting to be recruited. He followed to return them. When he arrived at the main road to the east, he was immediately out of the Congo knot. He came to the well ladder to climb to the front. The criminals are tied up, he came to hide. When he was unlucky, he felt that he didn't want to laugh or cry. When he walked through the entrance to the imperial court, he followed Hongwu. Isn't it bad luck? Why do I care about the guests' families, you? The guests are waiting to be recruited. Bai Ming, if you are happy, why don't you let me wake you up and remember? She is waiting to be called out, I will follow and find you. Once you are called out, I will follow you. Once you are called out, I will follow you. Once you are called out, you will find me. Once you are called out, you will find me. You didn't answer the question. You called to go to him. Even if you look like a person, you have to grow up. You're quite smart. You look small. And tell me what to ask, the great elder will. Dao Wen lowered his head at the same time. When Hongwu Tengzai arrived, he hurriedly fought a dragon. When he came to the entrance, he ran away. He welcomed the banquet in the side of the hall. He should not have Hongwu's main road to the east. What do you want me to call him back? Why did the president, Tang Sai, appear in this story? What's going on? The biological father gave birth to the biological mother, Yanadong, also at the same time. Hongwu Tengzai would be the head of the imperial court. Because of this, the head of the imperial court was shocked. He let Zhengzhen. Because of the original shock to the feeling of fighting a dragon, let it not be this. However, the situation was urgent. There was a man in the prime of his life who wore a face. The man in the prime of his life was full of vigor and vigor. His clothes and style were worn in the ancient style. His face was square, and the big horse was tall. In front of him, he appeared to be the reason. He was stunned. When he fought a dragon, he turned around at the same time. He went to the side of the imperial court. His head nodded respectfully. The pair of men turned around and stood still. After that, he sighed in relief. The imperial court of the imperial court should have responded to him. He should not have responded to the imperial court. The imperial court called the imperial court's Tungzai. Is it like this? Gate of life. Come and go, the gate of life is in front of the imperial court. Hey, the imperial court called the imperial court, but the man came and went in a hurry. The matter of the imperial court was not as simple as putting on an act. He came and went to the imperial court to suppress the blood of the imperial court. When the sound of footsteps was urgent, he heard this. He was killed by the law. How could he only do that? Well, the imperial court was quick. Was this me? Come and dare this imperial court's junction? What's going on? The sound of footsteps was urgent. Suddenly, he came from behind, waiting for the front of the district hall to arrive. Then, the fighting dragon was on the spot. Then, suddenly, da-da-da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da. Some of the members of the Central Perimeter Pavilion have come to meet Tangzai, and when they have finished, the wind will lead the way, and they will straighten their posture. Men's martial arts practice is good, just in time to fight a dragon. Chong Zhengtai, well, young and handsome in his official uniform, standing tall and straight. But when he finished, he was full of doubts about whether he was around the officials working and the guests coming and going. Walking along the corridor, walking on the floor, his chest puffed out, his head held high and his head held high. Qi Lingling of the heaven bestowing Qi Lingling has done very well for me to see. Come on, he does not recognize the eyes, one person is enough to accept, the hat and the staff uniform are put on the head to match, but it is clear that they do not count very much, and come to talk about changes. The transformation of the slightly more subtle entanglement is carved into the appearance of the fighting dragon queen, the back of the magic demon is a little more stuck to the face, the mirror of the magic demon is used for the magic demon. Other districts have settled down, with the past and the past, he is now like this, when the time comes, the toilet opens, when the dragon fights. Tian Chongfei came to pick up the straight well ladder electricity through, the regent's concentration of strength to guard the front of the circle, the hall's weak and thin is compared to the strength to guard the back of the calculation, so the toilet woman opens and leaves the fighting dragon queen, after the next pick up slightly. The palm and finger are like this, early on the formation of the earth, the map is detailed, Wine King Di Dong King. When he arrived, the wisdom from the past has been him, before this. Lu Shewu climbed up the straight path to the well, and went to the side of the ladder to compare to the secluded area of the electric ladder. Compared to the one in the Middle Ages, the one who calculated and fought the dragon was also the electric ladder of the well. Tai 5 only has a total of one ladder electricity to use enough power, the use of the ladder electricity has been stopped by the past, the number of ladder electricity is extremely large, the consideration of the surface of the test is safe to go out. There are a lot of electric wells and ladders, and there are a lot of them. The high-grade wine shops are like Wine King Di Jingdong. There are electric wells and ladders, and there are also electric wells and ladders. The electric wells and ladders are installed with electric wells and ladders. The well ladder electricity is the most simple. The top floor 15 enters the secret hall building from the beginning, when the case begins to open the most fighting dragon queen. Chapter 138. Of course, this didn't mean that Rui Hui was only that scary in Wu Hong's heart. In fact, for most people in Tokyo's upper class, the main goddess of Kamiyoshi, Dai Rui Hui, was a very scary woman. The Kamiyoshi clan was a famous clan in Tokyo. They had a lot of influence in the parliament, the cabinet, and the courts. Some people even called them the Shadow Kingdom. However, 10 years ago, the Kamiyoshi clan wasn't as powerful as they were today. Although this clan relied on the convenience of the House King to make a name for themselves in the political circle, they were nothing more than a front for the royal family. It wasn't until 16 years ago, when the previous vegetarian king Rui Kanzaki stepped down from her position as the head of the Kanzaki family, that the Kanzaki family began to develop by leaps and bounds. Using the clan's convenience to rake in money in various fields, and then using the clan's wealth and reputation to rope in and support politicians and bureaucrats, they built a network of connections with Tokyo as the core. In just over a decade, the Kanzai family's newly increased wealth and fame was enough to match the sum of the previous several hundred years. All of this was because of a woman, because of a woman named Konoshiro Ruehue. From this point of view, the head of Komiyoshi could be said to be one of the most powerful women in the world. Why was she one of the most powerful? Because there was a cheater called Tenmu Ayam in this world. However, according to Ryuto's knowledge, in the game Red Album 2, No Survivors, the only person Ayam feared was her. The reason why the Tenmu group and the Komiyoshi clan were mortal enemies was mostly because of these two women. Ruehue was a monster that could fight equally with Ayam, and her strength could be seen from the stats displayed on Ryuto's Hooligan Analysis Mirror. Name: Konoshiro Ruehue. Age: 55. Attributes: Intelligence LV5, Constitution LV1, Courage LV4, Insight LV5, Charm LV4. How should he describe her attributes? They were quite similar to Ayam's. Ruehue and Yongji were monsters on the same level when it came to the most crucial aspects of wisdom and insight. It was precisely because of their factions that Ruehue wasn't as bold and didn't have as much magical charm. If one really had to say where Ruehue was lacking the most compared to Yongji, it was naturally her physical ability. Unlike Ayam, who had undergone countless modifications and was no longer like a normal human, Ruehue's physical fitness could be said to be quite weak, even worse than an ordinary person. This difference in physical ability was also the deciding factor that led to Ruehue's tragic ending. If Ryuto remembered correctly, the ruler of Komiyoshi would pass away a year later due to illness. Her body wasn't very good to begin with, and as the conflict with the Tenmu group intensified, she worked even harder and fell ill. In the end, she fell seriously ill and was sent to chat with Amaterasu Omikami. With Ruehue's death, the atmosphere in the second half of the game became more and more terrifying. Without any worries, Yongji crazily carried out all kinds of sensational plans. She completely took control of the government in her hands. She arranged for the bureaucrats to perform a striptease on the streets, and mercilessly killed those who resisted on the streets. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that most of the dangers that the main characters faced in the second half of the game were actually a chain reaction caused by Ruehue's death. If Ruehue didn't die, Ayam wouldn't have dared to dance so happily, and the direction of the future would have been greatly changed. At this moment, the Konoshiro family head, who was about to die of illness, revealed a gentle smile and said to Takashi, who had come to receive him, "I hope that President Takashi won't take offense to my uninvited visit." "No, no, no. How could it be? Sister Ruehue is willing to come. It must be the honor of our Saitu Hole." Wu Hong quickly shook his head and replied, but he suddenly realized something in his heart. That's right. Sister Ruehue didn't seem to be among the registered guests today. Shouldn't Komiyoshi send Komishiro Yoshiyuki, that loser? For a moment, President Wu Hong was also a little confused. Originally, it was agreed that Yoshiyuki would come. Why did Ruehue suddenly change her mind and choose to come in person? Didn't she not like to participate in this kind of event? Ryuto was also puzzled about this point. After all, in his opinion, Ruehue shouldn't have appeared at all, and she just happened to appear in front of him. What's worse was that the person who came in with Ruehue was actually an old acquaintance of Cathouse. Although all the guests could only enter by themselves when they entered the gate, they couldn't bring bodyguards. But obviously, this rule didn't apply to Ruehue at all. Cathouse's bunny ball stood only about 1 meter away from the owner. After coming in, the old ninja immediately began to observe the surrounding situation vigilantly. Ryuto quickly lowered his head and tried to block his eyes with his hat. Now Ryuto's appearance had some changes because of the rogue magic post. The conspicuous yellow hair was also blocked by the hat. It wasn't easy to recognize him just by looking at his face. But the eyes were different. The eyes were the window to the soul. Recognizing people was actually done through the eyes most of the time. With the strength of the old man Bunnyball, as long as the two eyes met, then there was a high probability that Ryuto's identity would be seen through by him. This was simply the worst situation. What kind of sin did I commit? Why did I encounter such a level of emergency at the beginning of the plan? When Ruehue and Wu Hong chatted at the door, Ryuto's heart was really a million alpacas dancing crazily in his heart. However, before these two big shots could chat for a while, Wu Hong gestured towards the inside and said with a smile, "Big sister Rui Hui, let's go in and talk." "Well, but I don't want to eat in the banquet hall, and I don't want to be disturbed, so arrange a suite for me to rest for a while." "Can I participate in the speech?" "Of course, then I'll take you." "No, you're the host. You should be very busy. Just let the waiter take me up." Just when Wu Hong was about to say, "Then I'll take Sister Rui Hui up," Rui Hui shook her head understandingly, and at the same time, looked at the waiter standing next to her, or her future son-in-law. When Ryuto was stared at by Rui Hui, a stiff smile appeared on his face. It was even uglier than crying. "Okay, then take Sister Rui Hui to the presidential suite on the 49th floor. Thank you for your hard work." Having said that, Wu Hong reached out and patted Ryuto's shoulder next to him. After giving him a thumbs up, he nodded to Rui Hui, then walked away happily. Judging from Wu Hong's back, it seemed that he didn't have to face Rui Hui. It's just that he was relaxed now, but the problem was that Ryuto was really in trouble. You're tuning in to the Narrate and Escape YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.